That's what when we were going racing and stuff, like I was doing road racing, and when we would go do that, we would be, whenever we look back at this stuff, we never look back and go, oh, remember that race that we won? It's always like, do you remember like we almost crashed like getting to the race?
Yeah.
And then we stayed up for 2 weeks straight, and then we forgot the hood, and all of those kinds of stories that are like, oh yeah, that's we hated it at the time, but that's like kind of the good part.
You kind of forget the wins pretty fast, and the money is gone.
Yeah. Yeah,
like that.
No, it's not. We don't sit around and brag about how badass we were or how we won and destroyed everybody. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe that this happened and this happened and this happened. Because you have, when you go racing, you do the long nights, you do the stay up all the time, you do we're rushing to get stuff, and then things happen, and you're like, oh yeah, that could have been really, really bad.
Well, that's why drag and drive is my favorite form of drag racing at this point, because it's just like, there's so much in such a short amount of time that
it lends itself to that kind of chaos.
Like, I'll wake up in like the middle of the night, I'm like, was that a fever dream or did that actually happen? Like, was I actually 3 a.m. with no headlights on the side of the road?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that was real.
Yeah, when we would go out to the Silver State race, we'd do the open road race, and they let you run basically kind of flat out. So we'd go out the night before and do some high speed testing, because it's the only time really that we can go wide open throttle in fifth gear and be running 180, 90 miles an hour or whatever. And we'd go out and do that stuff. And I remember I had a guy come out with us, and he was doing a magazine story. So he's going to ride along with us during the race. And we brought him out, and we were out in the middle of the desert, and we're making passes. And he's like, how fast are we going to be going? I said, I don't know. This car will go 180 something miles an hour. And he goes, well, what happens? Like, aren't you going to be basically outrunning the headlights? I said, oh yeah, by a lot. I said, if something jumps up in the road, we are definitely hitting it. So you need to duck, because it's probably coming through the windshields. He's like, I didn't really like that answer.
What were you driving?
This was a supercharged 5-liter Mustang.
Oh, okay. What generation would that have been then?
This was a Fox. I still have it. I bought it new.
Okay.
I still own it. I'm an original owner. It's an 88.
So
an 88 notch.
Let me intro you a little bit here.
Okay.
So Richard Holdener, you're most known for your YouTube videos of debunking pretty much everything. That's how I know you from.
Okay.
Is like, it feels like you're just kind of taking internet claims and being like, a lot of these guys are wrong, or you just wanted to experiment with everything and you found an outlet for it?
Yeah, I think it's probably more of the second thing, because I have been, I get that title sometimes of Mythbuster, that kind of deal, which is cool, but that's not really how any of this started out. When I first started working for the magazines long ago, I've always been kind of a car guy, but when I started working for the magazines, I came in and I'm like, okay, we got advertisers saying, hey, this exhaust or whatever makes this amount of horsepower. And I'm like, how do we know that? Because a lot of this stuff was like pre-chassis dyno stuff. I'm so like, how do we know that it makes that?
Yeah, it's like, show me, prove.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I said, look, guys are looking to us as the magazines. They're looking to us to tell them or verify that it did that. And so that's all that I wanted to do. I'm like, we have to do something. We have to chassis dyno test it. Back then we had Vericoms. We have to Vericom test it. We have to drag strip it. We have to find out that it actually is doing something, because if we tell somebody that it does that, like I don't care what an advertiser says, but if we tell them that it does that, it better do that. And the only way that we can find out is like to test it. And so I went down that road basically for my whole kind of professional career.
So which magazines would that have been then?
My very first story, and in fact, my route down this magazine, avenue happened by accident. I went out to the Silver State race, which is the open road race that we were talking about, where you kind of run flat out. And I have an 88 5-liter notch Mustang, and I took it out to that race. And there was a guy out there doing a story for Turbo magazine back then. And he came up and interviewed me and said, hey, because the guy that ran Turbo magazine liked Mustangs. He had a Mustang and he was modifying it and doing stuff to it. And so this guy said, okay, I'm doing a story for Turbo magazine and we want to talk to you. And so we did an interview. And after the race was over, a couple of weeks went by and I called in to the Turbo magazine. I said, hey, look, somebody was out there and they did an interview, and I said, I just wanted to know when the story's coming out so I can, look for my name and I could I could be famous. I could be in a magazine.
Yeah.
And they said, hang on a second. The publisher or whatever wants to talk to the editor, wants to talk to you. And I'm like, okay. And he got on the phone. He said, hey, this guy that was out there wrote a story about this event, this really cool event. I went to that event thinking, okay, they're going to let us run flat out in a closed road in the United States. I said, this is only going to happen once because they're definitely going to close this down after this. And he said, yeah, this guy wrote the story. He said, would you mind looking at this story because you were there and tell me what is this, what, did this guy capture what's going on here? And I said, yeah, I'm nobody, but I'll take a look at it. And he sent it to me, and it was terrible. And so I was in a position where I'm like, I'm nobody, but I got to tell this guy, look, this guy didn't capture what the flavor of this race was all about. And so I told him, I said, look, I don't want to, I'm nobody, and I don't want to say anything bad about this guy because I don't know him, I don't know what he does. I said, but this doesn't say anything about the people that were there and the cool cars that were there and what this event is and how amazing it is. And he said, well, would you mind writing something down and maybe we can include it in this story to change the feel? And I just rewrote the whole story and I gave it to him. And then that became my first story. So my first story that I ever wrote was for Turbo Magazine. And then from then, after getting a degree in advertising and stuff, I just went down this non-lucrative path of like performance writing. And so that's what I wanted to do. When people were saying that stuff happens, I wanted to just, kind of verify it.
And you were actually a racer, so you got that firsthand account of things.
Yeah, I bought that Mustang in '88. I bought it in November of '87, so I'm the original owner. And I bought it to go road racing. So I bought it and immediately put a cage in it, went showroom stock racing. That's why I bought it, because I wanted to be a race car driver.
Where were you based out of at that time?
That was in Southern California.
Okay.
So I took it out and we raced it, and I realized how good the 1LE Camaros were compared to my Mustang, because they had brakes, and by the end of the race they still had brakes, but we always went through the brakes of the Mustang. It was fun racing. It was really good stuff. And then we put through the magazine stuff, the guys from Vortec reached out to me, and reached out to Kip, I should say, and Kip said, yeah, let's do a story on putting a Vortec supercharger on there. So we put a Vortec supercharger, because when I went to that first race in the Silver State, there was a guy that won the race in a Ferrari Testarossa, and I'm like, a supercharged Mustang could win this race, if they had the right, if we had the right amount of power. And so all of this stuff worked out together, and the Vortec guys put the blower on, and then we put heads on it, we put cams on and stuff. And so I had serial number 001 Vortec on my Mustang. And we ran around with that.
That worked well years. On a road course even?
It worked great. I ran this car all over. I ran it on road courses. I ran it on oval stuff. We ran it and we drag raced it. We did the Silver State stuff. I was mostly, like, for me, the top speed stuff was kind of the deal. And I've set records at Bonneville and stuff. And so that was more exciting to me. But we did plenty of racing.
I love that you saw a Ferrari and you were like, oh, my Mustang could do that.
I got that. Yeah, I got that guy.
It's such like a funny, the meme was like, oh, no,
oh yeah,
my Mustang could easily do that. And you seemed like you were right at the time, but it's just.
Yeah, I ended up going back and winning that race overall. And it was, it was a fun deal. It kind of felt good to go back and do that. And now they have cars like the whole time that we were out there, we're talking about what would be the ideal car here to run on this. It's basically Highway 318. And so there are frost heaves and there are undulations and all kinds of stuff. So like, oh no, what would be cool? Because people are saying like, oh, you need to bring an Indy car out here or whatever. And we're like, no, that's a horrible idea. In fact, somebody did that. They brought an American Indy car out there, and we were looking at it. We're like, dude, how much more can you raise the ride height on this car? Because, it's gonna bottom out. And he said, no, that's at maximum ride height. We're like, dude, you're not gonna make it like 4 or 5 miles. And he didn't, because he came down so hard that he cracked the tub on it. And we're thinking the best car to bring out here is a cup car. And somebody finally did that, because it has lots of aero, it has lots of power.
Yeah.
They're used to going fast. They're strong because
they're built like tanks.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're used to going, getting mixed up in stuff. And somebody did, and they went really, really fast out there.
Does that still happen, or is that just...
Yeah, I think it's still going on.
Interesting.
Which is surprising because, in one of the years I was out there, they've had some pretty big crashes that have killed some people, and it was kind of a tough deal. Especially after that happened, I thought, okay, definitely this is the end of this happening. Because before that race, I used to go down to the La Carrera, which is a similar race down in Mexico. So you'd run from San Felipe to Ensenada in the middle of, going through the middle of Mexico, kind of. It was really cool. That was a really fun deal.
Yeah, that one sounds pretty intimidating in a way.
In that race, they had they closed the beginning and they closed the end. But in the one here in Nevada, they also put course workers at every entry to the road, so nobody could get on and off the road. The whole road's closed. And it was kind of cool to be roaring down the road and having a CHP spotter plane like flying next to you, and having your car being able to outrun the CHP plane. Mm-hmm. But down in Mexico, they didn't close the middle parts. They just closed the beginning and the end. So the first year I went down there, I was in a 77 Camaro that we had fixed up, and we're roaring down the road at 135 or 140. Wow! And I look up ahead and I'm like, something's up there. I'm like, are we passing somebody? Well, it was a hay truck, and they were going 15 miles an hour in the middle of the road. So it was some farmer that had gotten onto the road and was going from one place, doing his thing, going from one place to another. So we went by him with two wheels off.
He probably heard something buzzing up behind him. He's like,
what are all these crazy gringos out here doing? It was awesome. And I'll tell you who the guys that were crazy. It was not us. I mean, there was a little bit of that, but before we ran, they ran motorcycles on that course. So guys on motorcycles did this race. One guy I think it was a GSXR, probably an 1100 or something. He hit a sheep, and they had to medevac him out because he cut the sheep in half. I mean, he was going fast.
Yeah.
And so, the motorcycle guys on that road are not good.
Any of these guys on two wheels, you see the Isle of Man stuff, and you're those guys
just
are
crazy.
Completely different breed.
Yeah, we watched those guys out of Bonneville, and I'm like, I don't know where they put their balls at, because they have to be gigantic for the stuff that they're doing, going out and going that fast.
Yeah. So what kind of speeds were you seeing then in the Mustang? What was your top, is that how it works? Is who can go the fastest?
Yeah, but 490 miles. So you have to. It has to last a long time.
Oh, so it has to be endurance.
Yeah. So in fact, when you go out and you're you're all excited. You're leaving the line, just like leaving the line at the drag strip. Wow. You go through all the gears, and pretty soon you're in fifth gear, and you're going wow, and you're going, because there's a straightaway out there that's 9 or 10 miles long. So however fast the car will go, it's going to go that fast on the straightaway. So after a while, the excitement wears down a little bit, and then you start to worry. You're like, oh, did I tighten all the lug nuts? Did I torque everything right? Because you start hearing mechanical noises and stuff, and then you're thinking, this is a really long time for me to sit here and worry that everything is right on the car,
I was about to say that'd be my worry, because even when I, quarter mile race my car, after the 8th mile, I'm like, all right, what's that smell? What's that noise? I start to
You're ready for it to be across the finish line, and so you have a lot of that in the Silver State race.
You start hearing some rattles.
Oh yeah, you definitely hear stuff. What is that? Did we pick up a vibration? Is it? It's kind of a fun deal.
That does seem pretty cool. So then you continued into magazines, obviously.
Yeah. So after I wrote that first story, then I started writing freelance, and then I started on staff. And I started on staff, even with my Mustang, started on staff at All Chevy magazine. So I started writing for a Chevy magazine. And I remember getting there and being it was a little disheartening for me to go into the magazines. And I thought that these guys would be just crazy nuts about whatever the thing that they were writing about. So the Chevy guy would, he'd have an L88 in his office, and he'd be talking about all the, and same thing for the Corvette guy would have a big black Corvette.
Could tell you everything about it.
Yeah, and they would know everything about it, and they were just experts, and they were just diehard people. But the reality was that a lot of them weren't even really they weren't gearheads that much. They weren't into it like I thought they would be. And a lot of them weren't even, they didn't even have journalism degrees where at least they could fake it really well. And so it was a little disappointing to me to go in there and not be just absolutely nuts about the stuff that they're writing about. Because how do you convey that kind of passion if you don't really have it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that could lead to why some of them are not here anymore as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
the,
and
the lack of passion.
Yeah, and we went through a lot of that. Some of the guys are really cool, and I got to meet a lot of great guys, and they were the thing that they were writing about. But there were a lot of them there that were not that. Mm-hmm. They were better at, because when I was there, I got offered editor positions, and I'm like, you guys would not want me as an editor. I said, because the editor has to go in, and he has to do meetings with all of these people and stuff. And I said, and that's not going to be me. I said, I want to be the guy that's out getting my hands dirty and building stuff and swapping engines and putting suspension stuff on and doing chassis down testing, doing all that. I want to be that guy, not the guy that has to come in and sit in, for these meetings about how this page count and these ad deadlines and this. I'm like, that'd be horrible for me. I would just guys would just definitely fire me.
And you'd end up starting to micromanage some poorly written articles.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. I would not be the right. Definitely would not be the right guy for that. So I went down that avenue for a lot of years, and then I got hooked up with the guys at West Tech, and where I started doing dyno testing, and so I love that. Because that tells me, like, a dyno doesn't have an opinion. So it doesn't say, hey, I like this guy's cam more than this guy's cam, or this guy's headers, or this guy paid money or whatever. None of that matters. It's like, and I told people, I'm like, look, I don't care what thing we're testing. I said, put it in a box that says A, and put this one in a box that says B, and let's just test A and B. And I could tell you at the end what A and B are after I tell you what the results are. Because I don't care. The dyno tells me what it did. If I test this and we put this cam in, the cam adds 35 horsepower or 50 horsepower or 100 horsepower, whatever it is, that's what happened. And that's what I love about it, because I don't have to, there's no editorial opinion on that.
There's just no politics.
No,
not
at all.
Somebody's paying to get a better result.
No. I've had people comment on that throughout the years. They're like, oh yeah, you're just saying whatever the advertisers want. I'm like, look, if that's the case, I've never been in the meeting where the advertisers are handing out money and telling me what to say. I said, because that sort of thing I've never seen that happen. I've never seen where they say, hey, look, you have to say something nice. Because the next comment for me would be, yeah, you can go pound sand. I'm not doing that.
The most they could probably do is like, hey, that part that's going to him, a little better quality control on it. Make sure it goes out,
The reality is what would happen for that situation is it an advertise? If somebody's advertising like in the magazine, and somebody else makes a competitive product for that advertiser, but they're not an advertiser. Well, if they're going to do a story and they're going to feature something, using it in a buildup or whatever, they're going to pick the advertiser, and they should. They shouldn't. If you're going to you got to take care of the people that are taking care of you. So it doesn't mean that we're saying anything nice about it. It just means that when we put headers on a vehicle that we're testing, we're going to pick the one that's supporting the channel. But that's not preferential treatment. That's not saying, I'm still going to tell them, look, it either added power or it didn't add power. And when I told them that, I said, look, if you build a good product, I said, this is going to be great for you. Like if I test a set of airflow research hits, those are going to work well because they always do well. But if you build a bad product, I got to say that too.
Yeah.
So if you don't build a good product, all of this promotion is actually going to be bad for you. So that's why I liked working with people that had good stuff,
Is it the bias though could come in for you, I almost imagine, if products aren't going to be as good, right? Because like you probably have a pretty good idea now, more than most. And obviously I'm not going to be like, oh, who sucks? Like,
yeah.
But who is actually currently shipping some junk products versus who's shipping really good products?
I don't know about that avenue. I can tell you that, when people are saying, hey, look, you're just saying what the advertisers want you to say. Because I've been called on the carpet and people have tried to get me fired because I've said what the truth is. So I had a company, a supercharger company. I did a story with the guys from Kenny Bell, and we tested a twin screw supercharger versus a root supercharger. And I laid everything out. I said, look, we even put a bigger twin screw on compared to the factory root supercharger. I said, look, and here are the results. Yeah. It made this much more power. It did this. Here were the charge temperatures. Here was everything, because we data logged everything. Well, and the guys that were making the root supercharger said, hey, we want this guy fired. And so they had a meeting with the magazine, the publishers, guys from the various companies came in, and we sat at a big table like this with them on one side, and B and the guys from Kenny Bell, and the editors and everybody on the other side. And I'm like, look, I said, what part of what I said in the story is not accurate? I said, because we can go over right now and go back to the dyno. I will rerun the test with you guys here, and here is all of the stack, because we brought stacks of data. Here's all the data. So now what part of this is not right? And they couldn't do that. And the funny thing about this whole thing is I was a freelance writer anyway. They couldn't get me fired because I wasn't working for the magazine. But they were adamant about it, and it was it got really heated. I mean, I thought that they were going to try to jump across the table, which would have been fun too. But
well, it's frustrating because on like a consumer side of things, you're like, the response should be like, we weren't as good. Come back in a couple months, we're gonna have something better for you. Not like go after the guy that pointed it out. Like you should take that data and be like, we got to beat them. We got to be better.
That's how you would want growth to happen. It happens that way. If because you race. So if you race and you go out and somebody beats you, you don't badmouth them. You step your game up.
Yeah.
Because that's how that series or racing gets better. That's why people get faster and faster all the time, is because one guy finds something, and then now this other guy needs to find something, or he falls away, but somebody else is going to find something that brings him up level or brings him up, and that's what we see as development. If you look at Cup, you look at Pro Stock, you look at Top Fuel, you look at any of those things, and you see that, hey, that's why in the 50s and 60s we weren't going as fast as we go now, because everybody stepped their game up, and that's just good racing. Just
like small incremental changes over time, and suddenly the two numbers become a tenth and 2/10. And sometimes it's disheartening when you're like, damn, that team really got it figured out.
Yeah. Well, and you see that, I think you probably see that every season, is somebody comes across something that was really helpful. Mm-hmm. And that's good on them because they found it. And that's the great thing about getting so many people involved in racing, is that the more people that you have looking at a problem, the more likely you are to solve it. So if you get a bunch of different perspectives, because if we're all looking at it from the same perspective, we're all going to come to the same conclusion. But if you get a bunch of different guys looking at it from different perspectives, they go, hey, we shouldn't be looking at the camshaft. We should be looking at the cylinder head. And then they look at the cylinder head and they find something in the cylinder head. And then the camshaft guy finds something with that cylinder head. And then the intake manifold goes, hey, wait. The intake manifold guy goes, hey, wait, look, there's something else here now. And then, everybody gets better. We were just talking about on the way here, we were talking about Brett LaSalle and the stuff that's going on with that. And we're like, and there's a lot of nuance there, but if a guy is doing well, that's good on him, man.
Yeah. Well, you're an old Mustang
owner.
You're not an old Mustang, but like a, Fox body older Mustang.
OG,
so
5-liter stuff.
I mean, you probably know Job Spetter from the days back when he was Turbo People.
Oh yeah, no, it's
his tuner. Has been doing it a long time.
Oh yeah,
and it's funny how many people started in like 80s Fox bodies and then continually.
Well, I think that we talk about this a lot with the Fox body stuff, is that Fox body ushered in a whole new era of performance for Ford. So we see the performance stuff back in the Cobra and the Daytona and the GT40 and all that program back then. But the reality is that on the street, Chevy enjoyed a big following for small block Chevys, for Camaros and stuff. But until the Fox body came along, we had like one cylinder head choice. Well, two. You could put a 69 351 Windsor head on a Windsor, or you could put some sort of Cleveland head on it. But there weren't aftermarket aluminum heads until the 5-liter Mustang stuff came about. Now we have, and even way back then, we had, I think I did 30 different sets of cylinder heads when I did the big cylinder head shootout that I did for Muscle Mustangs way back on 4 different motors. And so we tested all that stuff. But we didn't have any of that. I mean, a lot of guys don't recognize what that was before that. And then that just ushered in all the, all the modular stuff and the Coyote stuff that guys are doing now.
It is crazy to think because I wasn't around at that time of like the boom of it, but it almost seems like the Fox body caught GM sleeping a little bit when it came out because it was so versatile and they produced so many of them. I mean, even now you see them in drifting and road course racing. Like, seeing them drifting is so weird to me. It's like
it's different,
but it's cool. But even they had 4 cylinders in them and like all kinds of
crazy stuff.
It's very interesting because I'm always been a Chevy guy my whole life. It's just kind of
well, my first car was a split bumper 70 and a half split bumper Rally Sport.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked for all Chevy magazine. I like Chevys, I like Fords. Like people always ask me that. Well, what's your favorite motor or what's your favorite car? And I'm like, well, for motors, my favorite motor is the next one that I run on the dyno. I test everything. Like I've written books on Hondas, I've written books on Ford Focus, written books on short track power, LS stuff, a ton. And I like to test every kind of engine that I can. RBs, I have an RB25. We're talking about maybe doing some rotary testing because I met Rob Dahm the other day. He was at West Tech testing that single rotor Miata that he has, which was really, really cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so I like testing all of that stuff, but I'm not. For a time being, I was a Mustang guy because I had a Mustang, so I got that label. And then I was a Chevy guy, like an LS guy. And for quite a while, I was a Honda guy because I did won a U.S. Touring Car Championship in my Del Sol and set land speed records at Bonneville with my Civic. Like we went 227 with a Civic out at Bonneville, and it might still be the world's fastest Honda Civic if I remember it.
226 in a Civic is rolling.
Yeah, it's good. and I'll tell you what, the great thing about the Civic is a front-wheel drive car at Bonneville is awesome because like a rear-wheel drive car, Camaro, Mustang, Corvette, or whatever, you take it out there and you can make lots of power with those, but the back end wants to pass the front end because you're driving on a really, really loose surface. Mm-hmm. So, it's just salt. And so it's hard for guys to put power down. So getting the thing to like cooperate on a front-wheel drive car, all the weight's over the nose. We ran an open diff on that thing, and it just goes like arrow straight. The back is just along for the ride. It does. It's so easy to drive. I'm like, it's perfect for me. I don't want them swapping ends there.
Yeah. Was shutting down a little weird?
No, it was great. In fact, it got a little exciting when we set the record because we set the record in the 4th mile. We went out and set the record, and the axle popped out. And so I'm like, I thought I blew the motor up. I thought, But just the axle popped out, and so we changed the axle. So what you do at Bonneville is you go out and you set a record, and then you have to go into impound, and the car sits there overnight, and then in the morning you guys get to get up early and go out and back up your record. So all the people that set records are in impound, and then they go out the next day early in the morning, and they all you have to do it twice. So you have to back it up. You have to repeat it. And so we get up in the morning, but we replaced the axle when we were in impound because we thought, that popped out. We're going to put it.
So you can work on it in it.
Yeah, you can do stuff to it. So we went into town, got a new axle, put it in. But the thing that I didn't do is, and that we had done on everything else, is we break the axle in. So we want to run it in. We put zip ties on all the bellows so they don't expand because at speed they'll expand and pull themselves off.
Okay.
And
just
so
like an AutoZone axle?
Yeah, just an AutoZone axle. And we took it and the other thing at Bonneville is you have to set the record, you have to back up the record in the same mile that you set the record. So we're on a 5-mile course, but because it popped out, that happened at the 4th mile mark, we have to set the thing at the 4th mile mark. So we go out early in the morning, which is nice because it's cold, it's boost weather, and we go out and make another run. And about the 3rd mile mark, the car starts pulling to the right. I'm like, this is not good. I mean, I didn't let out. I'm like, we're here. We're going to get a record. And so I'm giving some counter steer. I'm like, this is getting really bad. And right at the 4th mile mark, the axle came out. And so, but I'm like, I'm by the 4th mile mark, and I pulled the chute, and because it was getting out of shape. It was going sideways, and the chute is nice because it straightens it out, but not before whipping it back and forth a little bit. Yeah. And so it straightened it all out, and we pulled in, and we're like, we're winning. But that got exciting there for a little bit.
What do you think caused it to pop out? Just the centrifugal force of it moving for that long?
Well, it's on the axle, there's a little spring clip that kind of locks it in place. Well, that transmission that we use was a well-used transmission. It was the transmission was actually from an LS, so a non-VTEC, Integra trans. And then we had a gear set made for it. We had a 4.0 gear set made for it so that we could get the top speed. And I think from axles being pulled in and out of this thing so much over its life, I think it just wore it out. And so it was easy for stuff to pop out. And it did.
I would imagine when you're testing these cars back to back, a single-headed deal is a little bit more more favorable for swapping things a lot versus some engines. Just
it was easy, but and that's one of the other reasons why I like doing stuff on the engine dyno, is because, for one thing, it is easier, obviously, because we have access to everything. We walk around the dyno, we got air tools, swapping heads out's really easy, swapping cams, all of that's very easy.
I always see that. I'm like, man, we're going to test 10 cams. And I'm like, that seems like a huge hassle.
And you notice that I don't do that on the chassis dyno, because it's just,
not possible.
Yeah, on a truck, leaning over, hanging over the edge and doing all that stuff. And you're like, yeah, I can see why people don't do this. And the other reason that I like to do it on the engine dyno is we're looking for like a delta. We're just looking for a change. Like it was this and now it's this. And then if we compare that to another thing and then it was this and now it's this, and there's a little bit of a difference here, it's really hard to control variables on the chassis dyno. So it's really hard to get a repeatable number on the chassis dyno because you have so many other things you're dealing with. On an automatic transmission, you're dealing with, you're dealing with outside temperature, you're dealing with oil temperature, you're dealing with trans temperature, you're dealing with how the converter is acting. Tire pressure makes a big difference. There's a lot of things that affect it. And on an engine dyno, we can control all of the variables. So the change that we see is the variable. It's not water temperature, it's not oil temperature, it's not air temperature, it's not any of that stuff. It's just the change that we see. And so for me, if we're looking to tell people this thing did this thing, we have to control all that stuff.
How much do you think the tuning plays into it, though? Because I always imagine, like, there's got to be tuners that watch and they're like, I could get more power out of that. Like, you know what I mean?
No, this is a really good point.
Because tuners are kind of macho about things.
Yeah, no, I
get
that all the time.
And they're like, oh, I'd put EGTs on it and individual O2s, and I could squeeze another 20 horsepower out of that thing. And how do you balance that? Because
well, I can tell you that that's not possible. There's no tuner out there that's going to come in and get more power that we got out of the dyno.
They probably all think it.
Oh, no. They 100% think it. But here's the reality. Like if we run an LS, like say I put an LS up on the dyno and it's got a cam or heads or whatever on it. Once the nice thing about this is I don't have an attitude about being a tuner. I'm not a tuner, and I'm 100% will admit that. But on the other side of that, I have a dyno. We have O2s, and a lot of times we have 8 O2s and 8 EGTs. We also have a single O2 that we use. And quite honestly, if I just use a single O2 and I ran the motor and I tuned the motor until it didn't make any more power, no tuner alive is going to be able to come out and get any more power out of that because there isn't any more. We know that that's the case because there's only two things that you're adjusting. You can adjust air fuel and you can adjust timing. And then once we get to where it doesn't make any more difference, no matter what you're doing, there's like if we lean it out more, it didn't do anything. And you'll get to a point where it starts losing power. And the same thing with timing. You keep adding timing until it doesn't make any more power. And then if you keep going, it will start losing power. So there isn't any more. There's no magic thing. Guys will talk about, it's injector timing, and we've played with injector timing. We've done all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not like we don't know what we're doing. And like I said, when I just put we went to when I was down at West Tech this last time before we came out here, I went to the wrecking yard and picked up a 4.8, and we immediately put it on the dyno. And in 6 pulls, it's making maximum power. That's all the power that it's going to make. It's not going to do anything else. Now, if a good tuner, if the motor is in a vehicle and he wants to tune it so that it idles right with that transmission and that converter and that camshaft, and he wants it to work well in every gear, and he wants it to cold start, he wants to do all that stuff, that's what a tuner's for. Like the wide open throttle stuff, like I said, that's 5 or 6 pulls and it's done. But all that other stuff, that's where tuning comes in, and that's the stuff that I don't do.
Like the drivability stuff.
Yes, all of that, yeah.
Because that's the big part of it all is the wide open throttle is definitely
that's
so
easy.
different.
When GM spends time and money on tuning, it's on that. It's on taking it to altitude, taking it to 110-degree desert, doing all that stuff and making sure all of that's right and making it essentially idiot-proof so that when somebody jams the thing in 6th gear and wants to go up a load at 1,800 RPM and just mats the thing, they're like, oh yeah, we have to make it because some dumb guy is going to do that. It has to be able to do that.
Well, that's always why on like the 2J stuff, people are always like, just get an OEM one. Just get like OEM parts. Like all different OEM parts are still used on like your most insane race because OEM did a lot of time and money to figure this out.
They spent way more R&D time and money on making their motor than any aftermarket company has ever done, making anything that they make.
Do you feel similar on like intake manifolds on a lot of cars? Because I mean, you've tested so many.
Well, when I talk to people about intake manifolds, I talk to people about an intake manifold is RPM specific. Where do you want the motor to make power? So if we take a typical kind of long runner intake manifold, a Trailblazer SS or a Fast, and we compare it to a short runner manifold, a Holley High Ram, a BTR Trinity, or that kind of thing, they're going to want to make power at different RPM ranges. Like the short runner stuff is going to make more power on top, but they're also going to lose power from like, let's say 6,000 and down low. What do you want? Like, what do you want of your power curve? Because you're going to have to choose between those. It's like choosing between two camshafts. If you want a camshaft that makes good power up to 6,000, or you want one that makes power from 5,500 to 8,500, those are going to be different camshafts. But there's going to be a trade-off somewhere else for that camshaft that you choose or for the intake manifold that you choose.
Yeah, that makes the most sense. Not just a blanket statement of like,
no, I can tell you there is not one intake manifold or one camshaft or one set of cylinder heads that is the best everywhere.
Come on, give us the magic formula.
Yeah, for any application. And I get asked that all the time, every day.
What's the secret? I know you're holding out.
Yeah, what's the best cam? I'm like, well, here's the problem. And this is interesting because this is something that I think a lot of cam manufacturers miss, is for some reason this notion is out there that the best camshaft exists. So even if we take one combination, so like let's take a 6-liter and a guy wants to make, whatever kind of power he wants to make. He's got a Trailblazer SS, he's intake manifold, a 92 millimeter throttle body. He's got 799 heads on. It's a 6-liter. What cam should I put in it? So a lot of people out there will tell you that there's one camshaft that's best for that combination, but there's not, because the best camshaft is subjective. So let's say we take 10 guys and we ask these 10 guys, all of them that have this exact combination, they all have this exact 6-liter. Okay, what do you want the camshaft to do? Well, one of the guys wants a stock idle, and he wants low speed torque, and he wants stock fuel mileage. The other guy wants as much power, peak power, as that combination will make. They're the same combination, but those two cams, and then everywhere in between those two extremes, are going to be cams that guys want. So the best camshaft is going to be the one that does the thing that the guy wants for his combination. And so that's why this thing about the one absolute cam is just nonsense. It's going to be what the guy wants. What gives the guy, how do we give him exactly what he wants?
So is there a bit insanity then of just going on a website and just clicking order on a cam for your combo instead of like, talking to a salesman maybe at some of these companies?
I think that it's way better for these guys to talk to somebody about what they want. But what I would like to see is I'd like to see these guys make a list, and this is where the best cam thing comes in. So they make a list of the things that are important to them. Like what converter can you do? What do you want, a stock converter? Do you want a converter use? Like what RPM range you want? Do you want chop? Because like a lot of guys want the chop. Do you want, is it a daily driver? Make a list of all these things and then prioritize them. Like even if we had the same things, this guy wants this one to be number one, this guy wants this one, and we put them in order of things they want, and then talk to the manufacturers. The other thing that I think that people miss is that, and this goes along with the thing that we were talking about, there being one ideal camshaft, there's not just one camshaft that will suit this need. So this guy wants this thing. Everybody makes a camshaft that will work for them. And they can all be a little bit different, but the guy's not going to be able to tell from, behind the wheel. He's not going to know that one camshaft was a 212, 218 and the other one was a 216, 219 or whatever. He's never going to be able to tell. The only guy that knows the difference between those things is a guy like me or somebody that tests it and go, hey, look, this one made 3 more horsepower on the top and 3 less foot-pounds down low. But a guy that has that in a car, his thing is not repeatable enough to even know that that's a difference. So he shouldn't worry about it. So if he wants to get a cam, BTR sells a cam that'll do that. Texas Speed sells a cam, the Cam Motion, Comp Cams. They all have something that'll probably work for them. There's not one ideal thing.
What's your take on the chop then? Is that...
I love it. I was so surprised about this because, again, a lot of that is just subjective. Some guys want, like my truck, everybody asks, I have a 2002 Silverado that has 355,000 miles on it. And everyone asks, well, what do you drive? I'm like, this one, and it's all stock. I said, the only thing it has, and it was this way when I bought it, is that it has some kind of muffler on it so that it sounds a little racier than a 355,000 mile 5.3 a stock 5.3 would sound.
Yeah.
I said, but if that's what you want, I said, God bless you, man. You should have what you want. If sitting at an idle and having the thing go, having it do that, that's the thing that speaks to you. That's fantastic. I want you to have that. But for me, because I'm a dyno guy, I want that to also go with somehow we got him more performance.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Is it too much of a trade-off at some point?
Well, we can,
if you're going for more power. I mean, most hot rodders, you're kind of...
The nice thing,
more
though,
power should be your goal on a mod.
I would hope.
On an engine mod. If my engine's coming apart.
Yeah. I don't, and that's where I was going to, is I don't understand. Like, the nice thing, though, is if a guy gets more chop, usually he gets more power. Because he got more power because of the valve events that went into making that chop. So usually those things go together. Having said that, I'm surprised that how popular like idle clips are, and like guys think that's the thing, that like they put the camshaft in and to them that's enough, that the thing just sits there, it has a cool sound, and I'm like, it would never dawn on me to put something in there just for that. But if that's your thing, that's fine. That's
I mean, it makes sense because a lot of these cars just putz around anyways.
Yeah.
And they just idle. And, Matt Happel always says you build a car to go get ice cream with. Yeah. Most people are just building that just to go get ice cream and drive and do burnouts.
Cars and coffee or whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And if you want to do smoky burnouts, that's just all fantastic. Build the thing for what you want it to do. And if that's on your, it's on your list of 5 things, that's fantastic, man.
It's just, it's almost kind of seems like it's died down a little bit in the last few years. Maybe the C6 Z06 really made it popular with the cam chop, and on an LS7 it definitely sounds a lot better than on like a 5.3.
Yeah, and that's why so many people bought exhaust systems too, for the same reason. You put the cam in to get the chop, but you also have to have something other than the stock exhaust so that you can, it really resonates so you can kind of hear it.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of stuff do you really like to test then? Cylinder heads, like air? Do you prefer to test like a turbo? Do you prefer to test like...
I don't know that there's a preference for that. I mean, I've kind of specialized in forced induction stuff. So I've done a lot of that stuff. Like one of my favorite tests was I've compared a root supercharger to a twin screw to a centrifugal to turbos. All in the same motor, same boost, same... In fact, we tested at 2 different boost levels. We tested at multiple ones, but for the story and for the video, we did 2 different boost levels so that I could show what the power difference is between all of those. And then more importantly for me, because not what the peak power stuff was, but more importantly for me, I wanted to show them what the boost curves differences were. So like obviously a roots blower or a positive displacement blower, you step on the gas and it makes boost immediately. A centrifugal, you step on the gas at 2,000 RPM or whatever, it's making 2 pounds and then rises to the top. And a turbo, same thing. You step on it if it's low enough and it's not making any boost, and then it comes up and then it's making all the boost. And if you did a good job with the wastegate control, then it just carries the same boost all the way across. So they're all going to make wildly different like power curves. And what I wanted to show was, because everyone, just like with the best cam, well, what's the best form of forced induction? I'm like, well, the best form of forced induction is the one that you want, because I'm showing you what they all do. Now you get to pick that. There's not, I mean, a lot of these guys want to say, oh, I have the best thing. That's just an insecurity deal. I don't care about that. Because if there was only one, like if there was one form of forced induction that was better than everything else, then all of the others would cease to exist. They wouldn't be an option because nobody would want them. They would just want that one best thing, whatever that is.
Yep.
But turbos tend to make the most power because they don't have parasitic losses associated with driving the superchargers. But a lot of guys don't want to do that. They don't want to do the heat associated with having them. They don't want to do the plumbing. You know, they don't want to have the turbo lag. You know, there are reasons why they don't want that. Putting a blower in the nestled in the V of a V8 engine where God nature intended it is a good thing.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said for nailing the throttle. A guy wants to do burnouts. He nails the throttle. He has immediate boost. He spins the tires. You know, he's a happy camper. And that works really well.
Yeah, I've had a few LSA cars, and I love that supercharger. It's so good for what it is.
Yeah, there's something to be said, and there's something positive to be said for all of those different things.
Yeah.
Like I had a Vortec on I had that serial number 001 on my Mustang for years and years and years, and I loved it. And I loved it, and not until, but I remember riding in a turbo 5-liter Mustang. I'm like, oh yeah, this is a different thing.
Yeah.
This feels like a big block. This is a whole different deal. Because instead of waiting till, you know, like in my case, 6,200 RPM or whatever to have the peak boost, it had peak boost at 3,000 or 3,500 and then just carried all that extra torque, you know, all the way out. I'm like, oh yeah, this is a different thing. And until you experience that or test that, a lot of guys don't know. They just think, oh, one's a blower and one's a turbo, and they're just, you know. It was kind of a cool deal.
Do you not like, in a way, though, like taking the internet myths and kind of trying to disprove them a little bit?
No, I do.
Because there's like old wives' tales in racing and snake oil salesmen.
No, I do like that. I like that was really the reason why I did the first Big Bang motor. So I did back in 2010 for Hot Rod. I took a motor, an LS motor from the junkyard. We put heads cam and intake manifold on it. We put ring gap in it. And then we put it on the dyno, and we just started turning the boost up to find out, because back then it was like, oh, you can only run 10 pounds on these because the cast piston will break or the powdered metal rod will break or whatever. You know, they'll only make this much. And I'm like, well, I don't think a piston knows how much boost you're running. It will know it when something breaks. I said, but you know, these numbers that guys are throwing out are like 8 or 10 pounds. And I'm not the first guy to do this. Drag racers were already doing this back then. But so we put this motor on the dyno, we started turning the boost up, and we basically just ran out of ability to control the boost until the motor just kept making power. It went up to like over 1,200, and we finally realized, that's the one where we realized that I thought it was a 5.3. It turned out to be a 4.8, and I didn't know that until I took it apart. I'm like, this thing is making peak power pretty high, higher than it should, and it's not making as much torque as I thought it was going to. And then it didn't. And then I just dismissed that, and then we just kept going on the test, and we got up to like, I don't know, 26 or 27 pounds or whatever, and we kept going. And then when we took the motor off and it was still running fine, I took it and took the pan off, and I looked at the casting numbers on the rods and on the crank. I'm like, oh, that's why it was doing that, because it was a 4.8 and not a 5.3.
Yeah, because you can't tell, because Jim was like, oh, it's either a 5.3 or a 4.8.
Yeah, it has both of those on the block. So I just would, you know, when we got that motor from the wrecking yard, I'm thinking 5.3, and I'm like, oh yeah, it says 5.3 right there, so it must be a 5.3. And that's why I did that. I did that because people were saying, oh, you can't run more than 10 pounds on these. And guys said exactly the same thing about the Hemi, too. They're like, oh, these pistons don't have a thick enough ringland. They're made of glass. They just break. You know, all of these things.
The Gen 3 Hemi?
Gen 3 Hemis, yeah. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to do this on a Gen 3 Hemi. And we made over 1,000 with the Gen 3 Hemi with the stock stuff by putting ring gap in it. And I think that the Hemi guys, the Hemis particularly got a bad rap early on because, one, guys weren't putting ring gap in them. And two, because early on, guys didn't have tuning ability with Hemis. They're just running boost on them and kind of hoping for the best. I'm like, how do you...
How silly.
Yeah, how do you know, like, do you even know what the timing is on this factory thing?
Yeah.
I said, you could be running 30 degrees of timing on this thing. I'm like, that's why it broke. It's not because the pistons are made of glass. It's because you're an idiot and you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so I put ring gap in it. We put head studs on it. We did all that stuff, stock bottom end, and then we started turning the boost up. And we got over 1,000 on the Hemi.
I mean, you look at it and you're like, this should make a lot of power. It's this gigantic iron block. Weighs a ton. Big cylinder
and now
heads.
it does have the ring land is thinner than an LS is. So I think ultimately the piston wouldn't, withstand the same kind of cylinder pressure that an LS will. But what happens in these big bang motors when we were doing it, we get to a point where we're making enough torque that it breaks the rod. And so the piston actually is still in good shape. And the other thing that we noticed is that, guys like to, because especially guys that were brought up with small block Fords and small block Chevys and stuff, is that you always did rod bolt upgrades. Well, none of the big bang motors they all had stock. In fact, they had the original, that when we did these, all the original stuff was used. We used the original, all the stuff that came from the wrecking yard. So the original block, crank, rods, pistons, bearings, even the original rings, we just put more gap in them. And the rod bolts and all that stuff, it's main bolts, all that stuff is all just stock. And so I tell people, look, and I love the guys at ARP, they make great products, but you don't need to upgrade the rod bolts on this thing because you're not going to break the rod bolt. The rod is going to break before the bolt is. And whenever we broke a rod, the big end of the rod is still sitting there just happy, and the rod bolts are all still connected and everything.
Upgrading the wrong thing.
Yeah, you're upgrading the wrong thing. Yeah, if you're going to change the rod bolts, make sure it's connected to a good set of rods.
Yeah.
That's the best way to go.
Well, I've gotten to know Jay, RS Garage, formerly Real Street, and he was always like, he basically taught me of preventative maintenance, of pulling these things apart before they break.
Yeah.
And that's probably something you would kind of catch is like, oh, the rod's looking a little stretched, like those kind of things.
Yeah, if you can measure it, you can see that stuff.
It's failure.
If it's bent just a little bit, you're like, oh yeah, that's got maybe one more run in it before it lets go.
Because like for the longest time, I was like, oh man, like once the thing's in pieces all over the ground, you got to figure out what caused it.
That's why I was talking to Rob. We were talking about trying to figure out what had happened when we break stuff, and he said if you can do that evaluation before it breaks, then you can get a lot more information. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I said, if you have a pile of stuff, you have no idea that this took this out or this took this out.
Yeah.
You don't know which direction it happened in, and so you can't do a good evaluation when all you have like is a pile of parts.
That's what he would say. He's like, people would show up with a box of scraps
what
that
happened?
fell out.
Well,
yeah, we can take some guesses, I guess.
Yeah. And I think for that, even a professional guy, that's all it would really be. I mean, to be an educated guess, but you don't know that did it detonate and pinch a ring, and then that caught the piston, and then that snapped the rod. You don't know like what actually happened in there without kind of seeing it.
Well, I've been on the phone with my engine builder before, like after a race. I'm like, it's doing this. I'm like, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. He's like, pull it out and bring it to me. What are we talking about here?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, you're
We're
right.
just sitting here speculating, and so let's actually dig into
and
this.
that's
and
me.
find
I'm
out.
like spiraling out of control,
Yeah.
speculating, and he's like,
yeah.
just
And that
let me
does
see
nothing
it.
other than increase your stress level. That's not
it's not
really
helping
good.
at anything.
No.
It's not,
No, that's not good.
he's like, it's 9 o'clock at night. Like, just pull it out. Like, what are you talking about?
And when we did the big bang on the 4.8, I'm like, okay, obviously we have to do a 5.3, and then that made more power. And then the reason that I did the 6 liters is because everyone was saying, oh, you got to do a 4.8 or a 5.3 because of the smaller bore. So there's more room between the cylinders, so the head gasket will seal, otherwise you'll blow head gasket or whatever. I'm like, 100% that's not accurate. I said, I'm going to show you. And then so we did a 6 liter, and the 6 liter made more power. That thing got over 1,500. It made 1,540, and it's still alive.
Yeah.
So we ran out of map sensor. We topped out at like 30 pounds of boost, and so we couldn't turn the boost up anymore because we didn't have a way to control airfield and timing, which get important when you get to that level.
You just start guessing up there.
Yeah,
Once
yeah.
it hits
Well,
that-
all we could do is turn the boost up and just change basically the top row and go, okay, now we're tuning it for 34 pounds or 36 pounds or whatever we would try to run. But this is another internet method. You're like, okay, yeah, from a logic standpoint, that makes sense. We have less room between the cylinders, so we have less, is it going to be more likely to blow a head gasket because of that? Maybe, but that's not what's really happening. Like, that's not the weak link. The weak link is the rod, as it turns out. So that's going to get hurt before you worry about this. And then also, do you have like we put CA 625 head studs in it, and we tighten them down to 100 psi or 100 foot-pounds. And so we made sure, and we had good MLS gaskets, and we surfaced those to make sure that the deck surfaces were smooth, and we had the right RA number on there, so that all that it would seal, because I wanted that to seal and that not to be a problem.
Yeah, giving it the fighting chance.
Yeah, because and that's what we were, and people, and as soon as you do that, they're like, oh, you need to do an unopened one. I'm like, you're missing the point of what we're trying to find out. We're trying to find out what is the weak link here.
Yeah.
And the weak link on that is going to be the fact that we don't have enough ring gap in it, and it's just going to blow up. I said, I'm not trying to find that out. I already know that that's the case. I said, so this is why we're doing it. And that's why I put, heads, cam, and intake manifold on it, because in addition to finding out, how much boost we could run, I wanted it to make power too. And so at 20 pounds of boost, something with heads, cam, and intake is going to make a lot more power than a stock one will at 20 pounds, because the boost is just a multiplier of what the NA thing is.
So to talk about testing modern engines, that almost seem just unfeasible now with all the amount of things that they have on there? Like some of these, there's just so much crap on them, and it's all just the plastic connectors that seem like they have to work together. How do you strap that onto a dyno?
Well, it is problematic in a car because all of these different body modules and everything, they all talk to each other. When we run stuff on the engine dyno, that's not really a problem. So we take normally some sort of standalone management system that doesn't care about any of that.
Yeah.
So all it cares about are the sensors and the things that are important. Like we were run a Coyote, a direct injected Coyote. So we set it up so that we can run, we have a lift pump, feeding the high pressure pump. We have there are standalone managements that will also run it, but we can also run it with a factory setup. But we have a factory setup that's designed to run basically on an engine dyno. We set up a drive-by-wire, throttle body. We have a pedal in there, which was kind of weird for me, having done the handle so often.
Yep.
So we have that, and so we can run that and we can tune that. One of the problems, and the reason why I don't like using a lot of factory ECUs to do this stuff, is because it takes so long to flash programs into it. So if we make a run and go, oh, it's rich here and we want to change that, now it takes a long time for us to go, hey, we need to take away fuel there and then reflash it. And so on the dyno, because dyno time is expensive, we want to be able to make as many runs and do as much testing as we can. So on a standalone, like when we're running something, we go, oh, it's rich right there. I just go, and then we're ready to run again. It's like, it's the programs, the change in the program is sent to that. I can make a backup run immediately without having to flash anything and wait for the whole thing to, download and stuff.
I guess I'm just imagining, strapping like a new C8 ZR1 engine onto there with the turbos and everything. Like what kind of challenges does that provide?
Well, anything that would be brand
LS?
new like that would be the initial learning curve. So we just go through it and go, okay, well, we got to hook up the exhaust. So we hook the exhaust up to it. We have to put motor mounts on it. We get that set. We have to solve the initial things first, each like new hurdle. So the first one is, how do we hook that up? Does it have a standard small block Chevy bell housing? Does it have a different kind of bell housing? What is the flywheel? Can we attach our drive plate to the flywheel? We can get that. Okay, how do we hook the motor mounts up? We got that. Okay, it's sitting there and it's ready to go. Now we can route an exhaust to it. How are we going to run the water? Do we have to run all of the accessories on the front of it because sometimes it's driving something else that we need, like a pump or whatever? Do we have to do that, or can we just plumb it with an outside water source with an external like electric water pump and get all the accessories out of the way? Just because that way we can get to things a little easier if we're going to make changes. And then we have to figure out, okay, how is it controlling all of the things it's controlling? How is it controlling the variable cam, if it has variable cam? How is it controlling a variable intake? Is it taking a signal? Is it, how do we get that signal to it? In a lot of those cases with the new stuff, we probably would run a factory ECU or a modified version of the factory ECU so that it can control all of that stuff. And then we just, like I said, we just go one at a time and solve each one of the problems. And then it takes a long time to run that thing for the first time. But then after that, you've solved you've solved all the problems. Now you can turn the boost up if you want and do all the fun stuff. But it takes a long time with like everyone's been after me to do a VK. Toyota motor,
because 56,
because they want a VK56 because they want to run. Oh, it's the new LS. I'm like, it's not the new LS. I said it's great. I said, and I love any motor that we can put on there and run, and we can run boost with it. I said it's great. I said, but if you look at an LS, it's the biggest industry going right now. It's bigger than everything else, and So it's not going to be that. You're not going to have 30 or 40 sets of cylinder heads for a VK. You're not going to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different camshafts for them. You're not going to have 30, 40, 50 different intake manifolds. I said it's never going to be that. But it doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be the greatest thing. It can still be awesome. If you can get cams for it, you can port the head, you can put turbos on it, and it's, if you put boost to it, it's going to be wonderful.
Yeah, it seems really strong. I mean, it seems like the block can handle a lot of power, and which is cool, even unsleeved, which is very interesting.
Yep.
I was thinking about that as like, what is the strongest factory block? Like, it seems like it's either like...
Well, that one that you have in your car out there is a pretty strong one.
They're hard to break the block.
Yeah.
I'll break a lot of other things on it before the block. But even like, see the Predator Coyote motors make like 3,000 before they break.
Yeah, but those are modified blocks though, right? Are they sleeved blocks?
Yeah, what's your take on that? Is a sleeved block still a factory block, or is it...
Well, the outside of it, but it's not a factory one in the sense that they haven't modified it. It's a modified
not like a
factory
spray-in
one.
stock sleeve like a factory block.
Well, yeah, I mean, but if you're sleeving it, to me, that's a modified block. Like, I don't care about the political ramifications of that. That's not important to me. To me, that's a modified one. So if I were to sleeve a block, like if I were to take an LS and sleeve it and say, yeah, this is a stock block, everybody would go, no, that's a sleeved block. I know, because we've sleeved blocks before. We sleeved aluminum blocks usually is what we do. And we do that mostly like on the LS stuff. You could do it for strength so that you could make a lot of power if you wanted to do that. The 5.3 blocks guys are making lots of power with, but none of the other ones. But we sleeve them so that we can extend the sleeve length so that we can run stroker cranks in them so that you can make big motors. So we were making 454s and 468s out of sleeved LS motors because now you're not drawing the piston down out of the bottom of the sleeve. Like a factory sleeve is too short for that kind of stuff. Most guys don't run longer than a 4-inch stroke crank on the LS. But when you sleeve it, we were running, 4.250s and stuff. So all of a sudden you have it's an aluminum 5.3 or a 4.8. This is a 4.8. No, it's a 468-inch motor that makes a lot of NA power.
Yeah. Well, those 5.3s they're hard to find, honestly.
Yeah.
They're coming to be. I remember a few years ago we were at Texas Speed, and they showed us in this back room, and there's just pallets of 5.3 aluminum blocks, and they're like, yeah, they're all going to be sleeved.
Yeah.
They just had, I was like, how did you get all of them, Trevor? Like, how did you?
Yeah.
They were like, we bought them from GM. They were overstocked GM stuff. And that's when you see and you're like, oh, nothing's going to be the next LS.
Yeah, no.
There's nothing like that. There's no pallets
I don't think that the LT is going to be that either. I think that as we get more and more complicated, that I don't know that I think the direct injection stuff is going to be a hurdle that a lot of people are not going to want to try to overcome.
Do you like direct injection as a...
Yeah, I love new technology. I think it's fantastic. And the nice thing about direct injection is that it gets out of the way of the airstream. So a cylinder head that doesn't have fuel going through it, while it might not have the same charge cooling that having the fuel there does, the fuel displaces that. And that becomes more and more problematic, like if you run E85 or you run methanol, because you're spraying even more fuel in there and you're displacing more of the air. So that the port that just has to flow air is going to flow more air. And then you're just directing fuel in the combustion chamber. So you can make good power with direct injected stuff.
I was talking to my buddy that works with Brell LaSalle the other day, and they were talking about ditching the intercooler but spraying methanol. And I was like, is that going to be a problem because you fill up that volume now is methanol instead of compressed air?
It will definitely change things. But again, like I said, you're on the one hand you're getting charge cooling, which is good and beneficial, and even to ward off detonation, that's a good thing. But you are displacing some of the airflow. That might be less of a problem on a turbo thing. On an NA thing, I think it might be a little bit more, but it has to do something.
Yeah, I mean, when you're making 60 pounds of boost, I guess things are a little that much airflow.
I would really be interested to see what he does, to see how close he can get back to the intercooler. And the other thing and this was brought to my attention long ago that I didn't realize, but because I was talking to guys about guys were asking me whether or not to run an intercooler with methanol. Oh, I just run methanol. I don't have to have an intercooler. I'm like, look, if you're running, and the guys that are doing that are running 30, 40, 50 pounds of boost or more. I'm like, look, you are running such high charge temperatures. I said, an intercooler is going to be more beneficial for you because if the air temperature coming out of your turbo is 400 degrees or 450 degrees, then you're going to want to cool it. It's going to be better with an intercooler. But the thing that I didn't realize, and they brought this to my attention, they're like, yeah, but the intercooler setup, especially in air to water with a big ice water, container, it weighs a lot. And so even if I got a power gain from it, there's also a weight penalty associated with that. And in drag racing, that's very important. So again, what is the net gain or loss from that? Oh, I make another 50 horsepower or whatever, 100 horsepower, whatever it is. But yeah, I added another 100 or 100, whatever the weight difference is. So that took away from some of that power. So now what is the net gain?
Well, it's always also like, hey, why did class racing outlaw it then?
Yeah.
It must do something.
Yeah, it is beneficial.
They don't allow it.
Yeah, because you get guys that'll do that too. They'll say, oh, I run methanol. I don't have to have an intercooler.
Yeah.
I'm not. No, it is 100% better to run an intercooler on any forced induction motor, period. Mm-hmm. But the nuance thing is, okay, well, does it offset the weight penalty? And how much do you get back from just injecting the methanol? Can you spray something beforehand and get more charge cooling? How much of that can you get back by doing it, and then how much of a weight penalty?
What is a factor on also like where people are measuring their temperatures?
Well, and that's important.
So if you're going to put your IATs, downstream of the methanol, you might be reading something that's not
you're wetting the sensor. That can be problematic. There's a lot of stuff, and that's why when we were talking about, the amount of time that it takes to get a combination up to speed and working, you find that stuff out because wherever you have your sensor, you're tuning for that sensor position. So if you change the sensor over, like coming right out of the turbo, and all of a sudden the temperature's 300 or 400 degrees, you're going to be tuning it differently than when you see it over here and it's only 100 degrees. And so you're going to learn what the motor will take going down the track, like how much abuse it will take or what tune it will take before it holds together and keeps running the number. And that's part of the learning experience.
What about some old engines that are resurfacing of interest? I know the Atlas one is like starting to gain more popularity.
Yeah, Calvin's been doing that. So shout out to Calvin and his dad. Those guys are great. I think it's very
4th gen with one.
Yeah, I think it's very cool that he's doing some of that Atlas stuff. I have a couple of those. In fact, I got involved with it because of Calvin. And we've done some stuff. I made an intake manifold for it. And I think it's a cool motor. Like, I like seeing, I have a series that I do for my channel called The Other Guys. And so, yeah, LS is huge, and even small block Chevy or big block Chevy or whatever. But there are lots of engines out there that we don't hear about. Like, I'm getting ready to do an Oldsmobile because, people don't hear about that.
Yeah.
A Cadillac, anything that's strange and weird is good too. Now, it's not going to be the choice that I would do to go like no prep racing or something. That's not what you do. But it's still cool that a guy has one of those and he wants to know how to make it better. He wants to know how to hop it up. And guys love seeing that stuff. They love seeing weird stuff.
Well, I always think about that. Is there some like Mercedes engine or some Volkswagen engine that people just don't even realize oh man, you strip all like the bullshit off this thing. Yeah. Really simplifies it.
I think the Mercedes, the 109, I think is the one that guys are doing a bunch of performance stuff. So people in different countries do performance stuff to different motors than we do. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the things that I like about the live feed that I do is that I get there are guys on there from all over the world. You get guys from the Middle East and Australia and New Zealand and everywhere. And they talk about the cool things that they do. And I'm like, dude, that's awesome. We don't see that same thing here, but it's just, it's like who's the Garage 54? Those are the guys in Russia. Those guys are awesome. And I love seeing a guy working on a Trabant or whatever and doing performance stuff to that. Because let's face it, they're just us. They're just performance guys. They're just doing it with like a different kind of car.
And sometimes those guys, because they have different constraints, will come up with some more unique things than us because, we got every part you can imagine off the shelf. Some of those guys are like, oh, we just have to use what you got.
Yeah. And so they poured it and weld it or, do crazy stuff together, weld these two manifolds together and all that. I know, that's hot rodding. I mean, I love seeing that
like
stuff.
What happens in like Brazil, I know, is big on that.
Oh, yeah.
Is like putting together with what you got.
Yeah. And Puerto Rico's like that too.
Yep.
Yep.
And I think it was because Brazil had such a high import tax that they were like, we can't get anything else. So
Yeah, we got to do this. We got to make
it work.
do. Yeah. No, they got
weight out.
And lots of weird motors are big over there. The inline 6-cylinder Chevy of all things is really big down there. The guys are making crazy power with them. And that's the thing that we were talking about is it just keeps escalating. Pretty soon guys are making, 1 million horsepower with these things. And you're like, dude, again, not the one I would have picked to go no prep racing, but awesome. And they're making a ton of power with them.
Yeah, a few weeks ago I saw it was a Mustang that I know the guy, and he previously had a 2J in it, but then he had one of those Land Cruiser. It was the 6-cylinder from like the Toyota Land Cruiser type
Yeah, it's a
thing.
4-liter 6-cylinder, I think.
Yeah, he had one of those things in there, and it sounds like a tractor. It's like kicking away and stuff. But he's like, man, it makes so much power.
Yeah.
Use nitrous to spool the turbo. It's so big.
Nissan has one like that too, a competitor. I think it's in a Patrol. And they, those were big in the Middle East, I think.
Yeah.
And so same kind of thing is that that's what you have. So you go and try to make as much power as you can.
That then also leads to like, would you try to bring some of that stuff over just to test it?
I wish that my channel made enough money where we could go, like a couple of things I wanted, like I'd love to go to Australia and go talk to some of those guys over there. The other place I'd like to do is I'd want to go to Thailand and I want to go see some of those boat races that they do over there.
Yeah.
Like the Box of Diesel guys. That's amazing to me. And that again, they're just racers. They're just like hot rodders. They're just doing it in cool little boats with gigantic like propellers and stuff. And their stuff is nicely turned out and they're crazy. I mean, you see them flip up and crash their boats and stuff. And I'm like, that's just awesome. That's just car guy stuff. It's boat guy, but same kind of thing. I think it's awesome. I'd love to go see all of that stuff.
I got to see one here in the U.S. and I was looking at it and I was like, man, like they made it work, but like the way that they did the fuel lines and like the filters and stuff, I was like, oh man, it's kind of all scary. But they made it work.
Yeah, no, I know. It's amazing that, and you see some of that stuff out at Bonneville too. You're like, wow, it's an interesting approach. but again, guys are racing all kinds of stuff, golf carts and all kinds of weird stuff out there. You're like, hey, there's a class for everybody.
Bonneville almost feels a little like some of those guys have been doing it a long time, but then they got so fast that were they able to keep up with how fast progression got on like the build and safety of it? Or I know some of them had to bring more people in on like,
well, they have they have tech inspectors. So the tech inspectors, the nice thing is that the safety requirements obviously go up with speed, just like drag racing. So that you have to have this kind of cage and this kind of safety net and these fire systems, all that stuff. So they've done a good job with that. I think that a lot of the Bonneville guys, the old timer guys, are doing it in classes that are maybe not as fast, I hope, or that they have the right safety equipment for that. Yep. The thing that surprised me about Bonneville is that how adverse some of the guys were to testing their stuff before they come to Bonneville. So we had, like at West Tech, there's a lot of guys that come there because it's convenient. A lot of guys that come there and have run their Bonneville cars, like at least on the chassis dyno, so that they know that when they're running at 6, 7, 8,000 RPM or whatever in high gear, that the air fuel is not 14-1, that it's, on an NA one, it's 12-1 or whatever. And so they know that that's right. But a lot of these guys out there, because when I brought my Civic out there, it's just sitting there idling, because it's the VTEC motor. It got 35 miles to the gallon. If you just drive it around, you can just drive it every day, which I drove it all the time. And a lot of these guys, like they start it up, they have a big truck push them or whatever. And so I was talking to these guys and I'm like, well, what is because they take off and the thing's going, it's missing and missing and missing. And they're just hoping that it cleans up later on. So they probably have already fouled their plugs or whatever. And I'm like, well, but what is the air fuel? I don't know. I'm like, well, they said, well, we take the plugs and look at them. I said, well, if you are taking the plugs out from it misfiring for the first mile or whatever, I said, you're not going to learn anything. That's not going to tell you anything. I said, you got to be going clean and fast, and then you have to clip it and shut off. That will tell us a reading on the plug and give us an idea. I said, but you don't know what the air fuel is like right now? They're like, no. I said, well, what did it do on the dyno? I don't know. We can't afford that. I'm like, so you can afford to come out here for 20 years and have it make passes like that and never make a clean pass, but you can't afford to spend or $500 or $600 or whatever it is to go to the chassis dyno and then go, oh, it's 9-to-1. It needs to not be 9-to-1, and this thing will go out and make a clean pass. I said, it will tell you that immediately. Or just go buy an Innovate meter or one of these meters and put it on there and go, oh, look, it's 9-to-1. It shouldn't be 9-to-1. We need to change the pills or the jets or whatever we're changing. If it's mechanically injected or whatever, we need to change that. And then you get to go out and do like what the Civic did. Wah, 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 wah. Because it's 11-to-1 and it has the right timing.
As it should be.
Yeah. And because if it's right, other guys that have gotten it right, they just go out and they make passes and it works.
Yeah, it's pretty silly. People are like that. I mean, I see it at the drag strip too. Like people show up and they just like 6 passes in, they're still like dealing with like a
dialing it in.
Like
yeah.
And it's one thing to be dialing suspension, but like you're dialing in like a misfire on your 4th pass still. Yeah. Like I think you're at the wrong stage here.
Yeah.
And I get
this
it.
This is
like,
not a test and tune. Yeah.
Like, you're just going back and making laps trying to figure out stupidest issues of all time. But then some weird things pop up, like I had a buddy, his carbon bumper hood was pushing down on the coil pack at high speed and causing a misfire.
Yep.
They'd go put it on the dyno.
It's
hood
fine.
Would be sitting over there.
Yeah.
Nothing's wrong. I don't know. We can't get it to replicate the misfire.
Yeah.
180 mile an hour misfire because the carbon was starting to arc it. And it's like...
You find stuff.
It's just one of those silly things. You won't even find that on a chassis dyno.
Yep.
You spend 15 pulls. Nothing.
Yeah, that's why you have to test it like in all of the conditions. So I tell people that about dyno testing. They're like, oh yeah, that's not real world. I'm like, well, it's one of the steps. I said, so like if we were doing, like when I tested all the cylinder heads, we flow tested 30 sets of cylinder heads. Okay, the airflow bench doesn't tell you what it does. No, but then when we go from the airflow bench to the dyno, now we have 2 points to correlate. So it did this and had this much airflow, this much average airflow, and these port volumes and all the measurements that we made, and then that did this on the dyno. And then now we go to the chassis dyno. Okay, it did this on the chassis dyno. Now you go out to the track and go, it did this at the track. Now you have all of the points. Mm-hmm. So now we can go, when it had this, it did this. And so the more information you have, obviously, the better you're off to go out and be successful.
You can see that sometimes. Like I know some people, and I was like, wait, that was the first pass on the new car?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when we were road racing, we made sure we corner scaled the car before we went out. We did all the chassis dyno testing. Everything was set. And the only thing that we did, like we would pull it off the trailer and then we might adjust tire pressures a little bit, but that's it.
Yeah.
But there are guys out there like you're talking about, they're out there during practice sessions, like trying to fix problems with a car. I'm like, you're having the same problem that you had last race. I said, what have you been doing? Oh, we just parked the car and let it sit. I'm like, well, that's why you're in 9th place, because you're not, that car can go faster, but it's not going to do that until you fix whatever that thing is.
Yeah, I've always heard the races are won in the shop.
Yeah.
Not on the track.
I spent endless hours when we did the U.S. touring car stuff with the Del Sol, where we won the championship. I spent endless hours on the chassis dyno finding like 1 or 2 horsepower because we were limited in the things that we could do, the changes that we could make were the motors. So we couldn't run cams, we couldn't run ported heads and all that stuff. We may or may not have done some of that stuff, but so that the people couldn't find out about it. But like I think we went through 12 or 13 different header configurations, and then as many like B pipe, we call them B pipes extension after the header. We went through all those. We went through a bunch of different intake manifolds. We played with cam timing and then configured offset gears that nobody could figure out what we were doing and did that, and then milled heads and then remachined the area where they measure to see if they're milled or not. We did a lot of stuff. We spent a lot of time. It was really expensive to try to get something that worked. And then we had a motor that made good power and it was perfectly reliable, and because it's a B series Honda. And we would go out there and it would be right. And it would.
So that's a really good example though of no amount of rules can lower can even the playing field when somebody's willing to outwork someone else.
Yeah.
Even if it's just the same rule set everybody's got, there's gonna be somebody that's
That's what I was saying. Getting
a little more psychotic is how I always
exactly. You got to read the gray. That's very important. And again, like we were talking about, getting a bunch of people looking at that gray area, they're going to find different gray areas, which is great. I mean, the greatest cheating thing that I've ever seen is the Toyota rally team. So they have a restrictor that they have to run, and the restrictor is given to them, and they run this restrictor, and they were up power on everybody. So they go out and run, and they're like, man, that Celica Alltrack, dude, that thing's kicking ass. And every race, they would give the restrictor back, and these guys would look at the restrictor. They're going, they'd measure it, they'd mic it, they'd do all, look at it, this is perfect. And then some way into the season, somebody realized, they're like, what is that? That's like a little parting line or something. And so they were finally able to figure out what had happened. So if you slide this thing, it opens up more breathing area. But it snaps shut when you shut the motor off. And so this would, and then, immediately, I think the guys that were in charge, immediately they quit and stuff and fell on the sword and everything. But it went through, 10 or 15 tech inspections, and nobody could see what it was.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing is like, I mean, that's obviously blatant cheating, but still done in such a way that like you're like, dude, that is just so awesome.
Well, cheating has like a statute of limitations when it becomes cool.
Yo, yeah,
Like
exactly.
in the moment, you're like, that guy sucks. But then like you hear about it 5 years later, like people look back at like Smokey Unique and they're like, he was the coolest guy of all time.
Yeah.
And everything was
no,
the rules.
It is, yeah. It's over time. We remember it differently than, because if you were racing against him, you would have been pissed.
Yeah.
But now you're like,
rightfully so.
Exactly. Guys putting gasoline in their roll cages, and then the Trans Am one, the under 2.5 liter Trans Am stuff, they wound their the fuel lines so they could carry an extra, I don't know if it was a whole gallon, but like a half gallon or whatever, so that they could go a little bit farther, because the 510s, I think, were racing against the Alfa Romeos back then. And so I think that the 510 could go a little bit farther, and so they could stretch it out. And so things like that, you're like, doesn't say that you're not supposed to do that, but that kind of thing. And I know that I remember talking to, and they would never tell me, but they just smiled and laughed. The guys from NOS were in near Long Beach, and I said, well, how many people during the Long Beach Grand Prix come in here? He goes, oh yeah, we can't say anything about that. So and like in drag racing, the Dodge guys that were using the nitrous in their batteries, their batteries were full of nitrous for qualifying, and so they would go out and make passes with that, and they were trying to, and it was plumbed through the hood or whatever. I'm like, dude, that's just.
Didn't their shop get destroyed immediately after?
I think so, yeah. It had a fire.
Like they were like somebody broke in and destroyed the whole shop like the next week after they were caught cheating.
Destroyed all of our batteries and our cars. And,
it's like, wow, what a crazy coincidence.
Yeah, what are the odds of that? Well, almost 100%, I guess, after you get caught.
I mean, I've heard of some Honda guys putting nitro in their oil.
Yeah.
For some races, because like the fumes, I guess, and like that would be a cool video series, is testing the cheating things, some of the cheatered up things.
We tried some of
how
that stuff.
people fudge the
because when I was talking about the Mustang that I bought to go showroom stock racing, well, I went out and my car was stock. I mean, it was, other than a cage, it was stock. And I went out and soon realized like what everybody else's interpretation of showroom stock was, and it was not what mine was. Because they had a lot more power and their cars handled a lot better. Well, come to find out, a lot of the guys had taken like Coney shocks and re-welded the factory ones, and like had Coney inserts in them and stuff, and done valving, and like, so they spent real money on making their stock struts be something other than stock struts. I mean, they had, these guys had done it, and the guys had all taken apart their motors and made them, even if they didn't blatantly cheat, like put a camshaft in or whatever, they made sure that every the heads were all skimmed, so every chamber was at its minimum. So that, and the same thing with the block. So the piston was all the way up. You know, it was zero decked at the block or whatever the minimum was. The minimum thickness head gasket, all of that stuff, so that their motor was just better than mine was. And they were better drivers too, because I was just starting out. So they could get around faster than I could anyway. But they were also in better cars because of all those changes.
Well, so then that leads me to kind of question, how much power do you think, say you took a 6-liter LS right out of the junkyard and then you brought one to like the, baddest engine builder of all time, and you were like, don't put any parts in it, don't change the camshaft, just make it make more power. Like, do you think that there will be much of a gain there?
Well, what are you allowing them to do?
All the factory parts, they're going to be exactly the same. They could do bearings, rings, things like that.
I don't think they're going to get anything.
But you don't think they're going to get any power?
I don't think they're going to get anything from bearings.
Machining everything, like...
Well, I think you definitely can get power.
Balancing
I don't know
all.
how much you're going to allow them to mill it.
Okay.
Like, if you mill the head, you
That's
definitely
true.
get power.
Yeah.
Valve job, you can get power. If you can mill the deck of the block and get the piston, at zero deck, or a lot of LSs are actually out of the hole already from the factory. So you're beyond zero deck. So it's going up into the area that's occupied by the head gasket. So I don't know how much more you're just changing the compression. If you allow them to change the head gasket to a thinner head gasket, obviously that does something. I don't think there's going to be any, well, if you can't port anything or even port match anything, there's going to be nothing there.
Because I'm imagining like a spec series, but it's like you don't get a stamped engine. It's like, this is the engine you have to use, a 6-liter.
Yeah,
and all the
you
parts
might
have to remain.
get some from altering, like advancing or retarding the camshaft, depending on the factory camshaft, depending on where you want to power. So you might be able to shift the power curve a little bit there. I think that there might be something from an oil pan. If one factory pan versus another factory pan, there might be a better factory pan that changes the windage or something like that. There definitely is power from changing the oil level. So the oil pressure curve changes with the level, the amount of oil that you have in the pan. So on a stationary dyno where the motor's not moving around, we usually underfill the pan. So we put, like on a LS, we put 4.5 quarts in it.
Yeah.
And so it has a nice steady oil curve, but it's not beating the oil up. I don't know about...
Like having the engine maybe breathe better, like the vacuum.
Well, one thing to do is if you can get the PCV to vent to atmosphere and not draw in through the intake manifold, that's definitely better. And so if you can get the crankcase to evacuate through the PCV system, that works pretty good. And you're also not drawing in oil vapor, which the LS manifolds are notorious for getting filled up with oil.
Yeah.
Because the way that they run the PCV, they draw all of that in from the valve covers into the intake manifold. And the way that those intake manifolds are is there's a whole big area underneath that the oil just accumulates there. And drawing oil vapor in is not good because the flash point for the oil vapor is way earlier than the air-fuel mixture is. So it definitely lends itself to detonation.
So would you think there's 30 horsepower on the table of just making it like...
I doubt that much.
Just optimizing a few things? That's interesting.
I think that the thing that to get a number like that, the other one, the stock one that you tested would have to be so far off. It would have to be a bad one. But like a good one to a gooder one, I don't think there's going to be that much.
Interesting, because like even when people are like, oh, it's a hand-built engine versus like a LS that are just thrown together, there's really not all that much to be.
I can tell you when we run if it's a brand new crate motor that's exactly the same as a production one, the motor from the wrecking yard makes the same power and has 300,000 miles on it. It makes the same power.
Weird.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, that's crazy that they're that consistent.
Yeah, over that period of time. I think that there's probably something to be had from break-in. So when the motor breaks in, as opposed to being new, once it's broken in, it could make a little bit more power, with the ring seated and all that. And so it makes good power then, and then it could fall off back to where this new one was.
I've also seen you test the 8.1 liter, the newer,
the Gen 7 big block. Yeah.
it's weird to me that those have never like been that popular or interesting because they do seem like they should be. Like,
Well, it's big, so right away, that's good. I mean, because bigger is better. But yeah, the aftermarket didn't embrace them the way that it did the previous generation big block stuff. There's only the Raylar guys, I think, are the only guys that are making an aluminum head for that. And because it's more like an LS port shape on the head. And they're really the only guys. Some guys are doing, like Amos Garcia has helped me a lot with this one. And so he's done ported versions of the factory manifold where they put a bigger inlet on it and go in and port it and stuff. And then he may have just 3D printed one that he's going to be testing, which will be cool. But yeah, there's one carbureted manifold for it that Dart did. They did it for a stationary engine, like an industrial one, like spinning a generator or something. And it's just not, like it doesn't make better power than the factory EFI manifold does. So it's not a good choice. But there's not all of the tunnel rams and all the stuff that we kind of would like to see for it.
Well, I was going to say, like, does that kind of like surprise you seeing like something not gain in popularity where you think it might? Even like the LTs are almost not gaining in popularity like you would have expected maybe in 2014 when they started popping up.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the... I like the idea that we're going to see LTs maybe more prevalent in the wrecking yard coming up. Because we can't continue to go on this path with the LS forever. I mean, I remember when I was racing the Del Sol, we used to go buy B16s, the JDM ones that they'd ship over that had 30,000 miles or whatever because they'd have to replace them. And so we would get all those. And those were our race motors when we were racing. And I remember getting those for like $250 or $300. I'm like, this can't last forever because this is like, I'd want to buy 100 of these because there's more value to me in this motor than that amount of money.
Yeah.
And I said, and pretty soon they're not going to be that price anymore. Well, they're not that price anymore. And I think that we're going to see that eventually with LS stuff.
Well, they're all finite resources. Like,
exactly, yeah.
I say the same about Foxbite. Like it's not a renewable resource.
No,
they're going
I know.
away.
No, I know. And that's and like I have a Fox body, so that one kind of has a soft spot in my heart too. But, you know, I wish I knew what the next one was. I don't understand why the Gen 3 Hemi isn't what LSs are. It has all of that stuff.
Yeah.
It has really good intake manifolds. It's got really good cylinder heads. It just needs a camshaft. Like, I don't understand why they're not selling.
They're readily available.
Yeah, I see them in wrecking yards all the time. There's a lot of the, '06, stuff in the Magnums. There's a lot of Hemi cars. There's lots of Hemi trucks. I don't see why that's not a bigger thing.
It is odd. I wanted also the Godzilla to be more popular.
Yeah.
The Ford Godzilla. I think that's a cool engine, and I think they even they've hinted more at the aluminum blocks becoming more popular.
Okay.
Because that would be nice, of course.
No, it's cool. It's big and it's got, it has plenty of potential. I think some of the problem with some of these motors is that like with the Godzilla, they don't have the production numbers for it to be readily available. So it's a specialty motor, in my opinion, because I've never seen a Godzilla, and I go to a lot of wrecking yards. I've never seen one. In fact, I've never seen a Coyote Mustang in a wrecking yard. Mm-hmm. And I haven't even I've seen one Coyote-based, like 5-liter in a truck in a wrecking yard. But the motor was already gone.
Yeah.
Because as soon as it came in, and maybe even before it came there, like somebody got a notification and said, hey, this is there. And that was immediately yanked out. But if I go to a wrecking yard, I'll see a dozen LS motors there. But that won't be forever.
I know. It almost like, I got a 2-year-old son, so I'm like, well, what's he going to be hot rodding someday? Because I'm still messing with the same things that were around when I was born.
Exactly.
Like, I was born in 94, so like...
We still see a lot of small block Chevys in the wrecking yards. There's a ton of those there.
That's what I mean. So it's like, what does he get to look forward to? And it's almost like there's like a skew of, what hot rodders want to work on and what is in all the cars.
He's going to be doing Tesla
now.
Plaids.
I mean, he does like some EV stuff. He likes his electric 4-wheeler.
Dude, those things have immediate torque, man.
I know. I can't fault him for that.
We took what are the Power Wheels? That's when my sons were young, I bought him a Power Wheels Mustang, and I took a Kenny Bell booster pump and put it on there, and so he could it had the little knob to turn the voltage up. And so he turned the voltage up all the way. It just annihilated the tires.
Yeah.
So he's like, wah, wah, like doing this drift thing. And all the kids in the neighborhood, they all like wanted his thing because it was so fast. And I put the knob under the hood. So he'd have to get out and he'd open the hood and he'd turn the knob and he'd close the hood and he'd get back in. Wah, wah, wah. And he'd go racing around. I thought, that's awesome.
They have Power Wheel drag racing, like competitive
I know,
drag racing.
Oh, they're serious now.
Wheelie
Yeah.
bars and like,
yeah.
they're spraying prep down. I'm
Oh,
like,
I know.
Oh, man.
It's crazy.
This is going a bit far, guys.
Well, that's what happens is people get into it, and then one guy starts doing something, and the other guy goes, oh, yeah, I got something for you now.
I love the class rules are like, this class is like, has to be a drill battery.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Oh, yeah.
or like this one can only be, you know, dual motor because some
Oh,
of
yeah,
them are
because
putting
guys
6
would be
motors,
swapping plaid setups into their power
putting
wheels.
golf cart setup
Oh,
on there.
yeah, just nuts. And the golf cart thing is crazy, too. The Steve Brule from West Tech, he got into the golf cart thing. And so he's talking about all these different motors and these different controllers and everything. I'm like, dude, you're just going down. You're just nuts, man. But it's cool. He goes, yeah, it'll go like, you know, now it's going 36 miles an hour. I'm like, that's unsafe. I said, I've been in a golf cart on a golf course. And I'm like, most of those people shouldn't be going more than 5 or 6 miles an hour because they're definitely going to flip it over.
Well, I got friends that are like, oh, you know, drag racing's gotten a little crazy and like they'll like, I'm going to go to side-by-siding a little while. And their side-by-sides then end up getting like insanely, like they got 2 steps on them and like full built motors, putting a bigger turbo
I don't have the big
nitrous.
turbo on this one. I just got the medium-sized turbo, yeah.
What is it on?
No, that's what I'm saying. Is that that's what they'll tell you for the side-by-sides. They're like, oh, yeah, I just put a stroker motor in it and then I put a turbo on it.
Well, because they're so good.
Yeah.
And they make so much power like you're talking like 400 horsepower out of something that has no like road safety. So
I was going to say they're already wildly
pounds.
unsafe. Yeah, I don't know if did you ever drive any of the 3-wheel ATVs?
Never any 3-wheel.
Oh, okay. Those things were diabolical. I could see why they had problems with those. I remember riding those. We used to get jacked up so much in those things.
2 in the back.
Did you ever ride that?
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Unsafe.
The one in the front is questionable.
Oh yeah, it's sketchy. But fun though. I mean, because you know, when you're a kid, you gotta be doing that stuff. You got to be walking fences and doing all kinds of dumb stuff.
So Hemi might be next. Maybe LT. Coyote has a lot of potential, but they're hard to find.
Yeah.
I think it's just really there is no next LS, and you just hope that people are gentle on them. Because I see some people and I'm like, man, that's your 4th LS this week. Like you gotta. Or this year, you gotta tone it down a little bit here.
I know. When I was down at West Tech, I went and picked up 3 of them from the wrecking yard because we were get a 4.8. And I'm like, well, if this one's not good, I got to get another one. And then there was a 6-liter there. I'm like, well, I'm at a wrecking yard and there's a 6-liter. I got to get the 6-liter. So we just got all of them. And so what you're asking, like what your kid is going to do, you just need to go get and I wish I would have done this with the B-Series stuff, you just need to go fill a warehouse up full of LSs. And that way you can be the guy later on when everyone's like, man, I wish I had one of those LSs. You're like, you can for $1,500. And instead of $300, it's gone up a little bit, and so you make a little bit of money off the deal.
Investing in some
that's
LSs.
This is my 401k. I have 400 like LS motor or 401 LS motors that I'm going to sell later on.
And they can only make so much. Like they'll only make so many aftermarket. Like they'll make the aftermarket blocks and cranks, which tend to be more money than a block.
Oh yeah,
which is insane. It's like. It's like, oh, yeah, a block is, like, people will be like, oh, the block's only this much. I'm like, yeah, well, if it doesn't have a crank, that's where you're going to freaking get yourself. How fast do you pull an engine? Do you have to pull these from the wrecking yards?
Actually,
is
this
it
time.
You pull it?
Well, I have pulled lots of them. This time, because I'm testing at West Tech and I'm on the dyno, I just paid them to pull it.
Yeah.
So they used to have guys there that hung out around the thing, and you could just pay them. They would go in and pull it. I've done a bunch, and then I had that guy that used to be there, and then they got rid of all those guys. Because what happens is the wrecking yard goes, they see that as money. They're like, that's money that we're missing out on. So they see guys going to the wrecking yards and buying things and then reselling them on Marketplace or on eBay, and they're like, that's money we're missing out on. So we're going to raise our prices, and then we're also going to get rid of the guys that are taking the motors out, and we're going to charge to remove these motors because they don't, they didn't convert completely over to we're taking everything out and you just come to the counter and tell us what you want and then you buy that for more money. So it was like $150 to pull each one of the motors. But since I was on the dyno, I'm like, just do it. I mean, I come there, I arrive there, the thing's done, it's ready to go. All the things are taken off of it that I didn't want, and we just load it up in the car, and that's fine for me.
Well, like a lot of the local ones stopped letting you use power tools in there at all.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do you want me to do here? I can't use a power tool?
I'm not going to use a ratchet to take that. That's going to take forever, man.
Like they first started with like no jacks, no saws, no power. Like, it's like, man, it's getting pretty difficult now to pull an engine.
I'm lucky in the wrecking yard that I go to, and I haven't seen, I want to watch somebody do this because I've never tried this, but they just cut the frame. They cut the frame and the whole front of the car just tips forward, and then they can get to everything.
See, that seems nice.
Yeah, and I'm like, I mean, since most of those guys the wrecking yards would probably be just scrapping the frame and what's left of the body after people strip everything off of it that they don't want. They probably don't care that it's cut, so it's not a big deal to them. Because I don't know how many guys are going to the wrecking yard to just get the frame. I don't think that they're selling that. So I don't think it's a big deal to the wrecking yard guys, but it is a really fast way. Because like the guy that I paid to do it, he would cut the front radiator support, and all that would come off. So then he could just kind of walk in there and get access to everything. But the guys, that's next level stuff. Like you go back and you're like, they just cut right through the frame. You're like, oh, okay, let's get with the program there.
That seems like the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
But a lot of them, the wrecking yards have become so corporate now.
Yeah.
There's almost like a corporate takeover, like a private
LKQ
equity.
went and bought all of the stuff, yeah.
And it's actually getting almost unreasonable prices. And you're like, wait, I can just get a new one. I'm going to go pull that?
Yeah.
Like if you're talking about like a brake caliper or like an AC compressor, you're like, they've almost priced...
Oh, it's ridiculous.
They've almost priced it too high. And I haven't seen many people talk about the LKQ or corporate takeover of...
No, they did,
junkyards.
because you get the new price, and then you get what's a wrecking yard price with room in the middle where you could, if you were going to resell it, you could make a little bit of money. But it's a good enough deal where you would use your time and labor to get it. I'm saving enough money. That's a good thing. And what somebody at LKQ and these other places they realize, they're like, we should bridge this gap. We should get it closer. We need to get it just enough to where they'll still do it. And one of the nice things I like about the wrecking yard that I went where I got these motors from is I think that they used to be owned by LKQ. And I think that they're bought out now by somebody else. And one of the things that they did immediately, they said, we have gone back to our old pricing. So it's $3 to get in now instead of $5, and they've lowered their prices on everything. So I like that because I was like, I was not going to go to the wrecking yard anymore at the prices that they were asking for stuff. I'm like, this isn't a good deal. This isn't this is ruining, basically, it's kind of ruining our sport if everybody continued to do that.
No, I mean, it was causing like real damage to things and, parts being more expensive where there was no reasonable place to get it. And then wrecking yards started to close. I think we had our one local that was privately owned closed, and now it's just the LKQ there.
Yeah.
But it's like, man, that's kind of like the spot that was needed.
But if a guy had 401 LSs sitting over in his warehouse, he'd be looking pretty good then, right?
I mean, I would always admire the LSs. I always like looking around, just walking around there.
That's my favorite place. I go, like when I go down to West Tech, I'll spend the $3 or whatever, go and just walk through the thing and go, yep, I'd like one of those. I'd like one of those. I'm just like window shopping. It's like when my wife goes through and looks at shoes or whatever she's looking at, I'm like, I get it. I get that stirs you because I know what that's like. I'm like, I would want one of those to go home. Oh, look at that car. I want that. That's awesome. I want that. Oh, look at that. Look at that exhaust manifold. That would be perfect for a turbo. And just walking through there, like looking at all the stuff. And people are like, that's just so weird. I'm like, no, this is the right way to be.
My buddy Brent would always say, he's like, oh, yeah, you always got to fill your pockets with relays and fuses.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, oh, yeah, that's kind of okay, right? Yeah. Most of those are just going in the dirt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I've had some people...
There's some good clips about that kind of stuff.
I got a buddy that would... he was in Colorado, and he just wanted the transmission stack out of a Honda and transmission.
Yeah.
So he'd be in the back of some wagon hatchback car pulling just the stack out because he didn't want to buy the whole transmission. There's just like a mess in the back of some hatchback or minivan.
I like and
tucked away.
The other thing I like doing at the wrecking yards is you go there before they have their big sale weekend. And so you walk through there and you look in the back. You look in the trunks and in the back of the vans and the back of the trucks. Because people will take stuff, like they'll take import stuff and they'll put it over in like an F-250 or whatever. You're like, that motor or that intake manifold or that desirable thing from an import is sitting over here because somebody hit it. So they took it out and they're gonna come get it on the sale weekend and pay 40% less, but they don't want somebody else to take it, so they took it over here and they hid it. I'm like, oh, dude, that's so awesome.
That's pretty smart.
Yeah,
the all you can carry where people are
I
nearly
love
dying.
Those. Yeah, I love those.
Some dude's got an LS around his neck and he's like,
oh, I know,
trying his best dragging this thing.
See,
basically,
guys put like these big dudes put a pole and they hang, a transmission over here and another thing over here, and they're like, I'm like, dude.
I feel that corporate probably tries to stop that.
Yeah. But how awesome is that? I mean, you get those country strong guys, man. They can make that stuff happen.
Yeah. I mean, what are they even going to be filled with in 10 years if they're even around?
Yeah, I can remember going to wrecking yards a while back and being disappointed and stuff because it was cool to go see specialty stuff. Like you could see older Camaros and things like that. But then when all we started seeing was like front wheel drive Grand Ams and things like that, I'm like, nobody's going to want to do anything with these. Like a guy that has a Grand Am, yeah, I mean, he may want to get whatever, the headlight switch for, or whatever. That I get that.
It's like somebody spent $8.
Yeah, but that's not like, they're not going to be pulling the motor to swap it into something. Nobody's going to be doing that stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is kind of depressing. But then, we have IROCs and 5-liter Mustangs, and pretty soon we have a whole new, it's basically, I like to tell people that the 5-liter Mustang and to some extent the Camaro too, ushered in a whole new muscle car era. So everybody talks about the muscle car era of the 50s and 60s and early 70s. But right now we are still enjoying a much longer muscle car era because this kind of started in the early to mid 80s, because Ford said, okay, we've got this. Their thing was the boss is back. So they got a 5-liter Mustang. It made 157 horsepower. It had a 4-speed trans and a 2-barrel carburetor. And then every year it got better. We added dual exhaust. We ran a 4-barrel. We added a 5-speed. And then we got into the fuel injected area. And then everyone's like, oh yeah, fuel injection performance is dead. No one's going to be able to modify these. And pretty soon people started having blower kits and turbo kits. And pretty soon we have this. It was a multi-billion-dollar industry around the 5-liter Mustang stuff.
Well, I was talking to a buddy, and he was like, he's older, I think he's 80s, and he was like, yeah, the first time I was at a drag strip and I saw somebody put their laptop on the roof, he was like, mind blown.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, wow, what a crazy thing to be like.
For me, because a lot of guys were doing turbo stuff for Mustangs, like Storm and Norman and all those guys that were racing back then. But I remember the first time I saw a Grand National run at the track, because all these cars pull up like at the drag strip, it's like blah 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 blah. They can do high compression, big Lux with giant cams and everything, and so they're also loud and everything. Got these open exhaust, and this Grand National just pulled up, went just like power braked it, and just went off. And I think he went 1150s or something like that, because it wasn't completely modified.
Pretty
or whatever.
Impressive.
But it was like whisper quiet.
Yeah.
The thing hooked up, and it just went out and went the number. I'm like, oh, that's what performance is going to be. It's going to be that.
Huh.
It was awesome.
And then how does it go from there? It goes just bigger engines, and finally we're seeing V8s with turbos. It took long enough for GM to get behind that. It's like, hey.
Oh, I know. That's a serious
about time. Like
1,000 horsepower Corvettes.
Yeah.
And again, and that's the thing. Like I said, we're seeing this modern muscle car era, and where does it end? It's kind of cool that
Ford has to respond.
Yeah, and Dodge is bringing back the V8, so that will be interesting.
Like they have to respond to each other, which being in like an arms race is the best thing that we can see for.
Oh yeah, it's good for us as enthusiasts, right?
Yeah, I want to see them in an arms race for sure. I want to see who can win, who can make the best performance.
Did you hear what he said over here? Yeah, he's talking to you, man. You better step up your game.
Yeah, we need like CEO beef here
to make
better performance cars for all of us. But then they kind of slip away from the enthusiasts a little bit at times.
And I think in terms of pricing, I don't know that a a Corvette like that is not a regular guy car, I don't think. It's certainly not for our market, but
I'm not buying a $300,000
No.
Corvette.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
No.
It sounds cool. I'm cool. I'm glad they exist.
yeah. I like that they exist.
What's your take on then, like the flat plane kind of stuff?
I've had guys ask me about that a lot. Hey, cool, why don't you build a flat plane crank V8? Like I've owned a flat plane crank car, a car, but and you can see if you look back at what Ford did with the GT350, they had a lot of problems with it, and all of it was vibration.
They couldn't balance the
Yeah.
motor. There was like
Yeah.
blocks of.
Yeah, it's balanced, but the second and third order vibrations, I hope I'm saying that right. The vibration frequencies of a flat plane crank make it difficult for everything else. So like the Ferrari that I had, that was a smaller displacement, it was a 3.5 liter. And what they did is they made fluid filled motor mounts to absorb some of that frequency. I mean, the motor sounded glorious because it was, 8,500 RPM or whatever, and it sounded fantastic. But a flat plane crank is problematic for that. And, GM came out with their version of that. But I don't know that I don't understand why that would necessarily be a performance gain unless you take advantage of it in other ways.
Yeah, I mean, people always throw it out there
Yeah.
as like it's this huge thing, but
Yeah.
what is it truly doing?
To me, that's not a thing. Like
Can it rev higher because of the balancing of it? The way that
I don't know. What do you think, Jimmy? I don't know that that's a RPM. That's usually valve train and stuff. That's not a crankshaft thing.
Right.
Yeah.
they maybe it's a marketing thing.
I think so.
That's
I mean,
what Ferrari does.
Yeah, that's it. There's some mystique to it. Like race cars have this, that sort of thing. But the thing that I always talk about, and not just with a flat plane crank, but with anything, is like, okay, we can talk about that, but is that what's limiting you right now from making power? Like, is it limiting the RPM potential if you're going to make a flat plane crank LS? Is that limiting? It's going to sound cool. I mean, I'll give you that, but is it stopping us from making the power that we want? Not with a stock block, obviously, because we can get to the limit of the stock block where we got to replace a block. We can already do that with turbos. I mean, that's easy. So it's not that. And so the same thing I get with guys like, should I get this other camshaft? I'm like, look, you have a 1,000 horsepower turbo. You can make 1,000 horsepower with any of 1,000 different camshafts. That's not limiting you. So pick the camshaft for the other things that you want, and same thing with a flat plane crank. I'd tell people, like, look, is that limiting you? Do you want it because it's going to sound amazing? That's cool. I can get behind that. But it's not stopping you from making power.
It must have just been for the exotic sound then, like the Z06.
Yeah, I'm guessing. Brett's not using a flat plane
No.
GT350 crank in that, right?
No.
Yeah. So
They use just a.
yeah,
They used to use like a Predator crank. Now it's probably a
Okay.
deal.
Yeah.
But I mean, is it more like akin of talking about like firing order? It's like it's not.
Yeah,
Really?
I get that question a lot too. Like, hey, and more so with the small block Chevy stuff, they want to run the LS firing order, or vice versa. We get some of that questions too, and I'm like, well, we've done tests at West Tech, and I didn't do this, but the guys at West Tech did, and the guys from Hot Rod did firing order tests where all they altered was the firing order, and it didn't affect the power at all. Because the power output that you're getting is a function of the valve events. So how much lift and duration, lobe separation angle, when does the thing open and close relative to the piston position? That's the important thing. Not like what order they're firing in. You might get something there based on what induction system that you have. Like a firing order, I could see possibly liking a dual plane intake manifold more one way than the other. But again, what happens a lot is you get a bonus in this cylinder, but then you've also hurt this other cylinder. So what is the net gain? So that's why I'm such a big proponent of testing. Yeah, I'm excited about it. Let's find out. But don't be surprised if it's a net zero.
Well, I also heard somebody talking about a race motor, a Gen 3 Hemi, and they were saying that they lost 100 horsepower when they turned off the second set of
Spark plug wire.
Spark plugs.
Spark plugs, yeah.
And I was like, wow, it's really crazy that there's such a big horsepower loss there on their race motor, at least.
Yeah.
You know, they were making a ton of power.
Oh, okay.
But it must be because it just doesn't burn the fuel as efficiently.
If, I would like to, first of all, I'd like to see that. The second thing is I would like to see what change it had to their air fuel and also what change it had to their timing. Because did they change by having the second plug there, are they firing the same plug at the same time? Are they firing it earlier? Are they firing it later? Because that would affect the burn, when the expansion is going to happen. So because that's what timing does. We want it to happen at a different RPM. We want the expansion to still happen at roughly the same spot on the other side. It's expanding as the piston's going down. If doing that to the spark plug changed that could change power. But if you're not getting a misfire, a good example of this is, guys, I've done lots of testing with spark plugs. So I've done tests with different style spark plugs, different materials, different gaps, different indexing. You got to have the electrode aimed this way toward the intake, toward the exhaust, away from whatever. And I've tested a lot of that stuff. And as long as the thing is firing and you don't have misfire, I have not seen changes in power from spark plugs.
What about depth? Nothing how?
Well, you could change depending on how far you push that down, you could change compression by doing that a little bit.
Oh yeah, true.
But not. I've tried extended tips and that kind of stuff, and not. I mean, most of the time, like this 4.8, I just ran the plugs and the wires and the coil pack and stuff, except for one because they broke one when they were pulling it out. But I just ran those, the ones that came with it.
Yeah.
And we just ran that. Because I got a lot of guys that too. Oh, yeah, what if I upgraded the coil packs? Or what if I upgraded the wires? I'm like, if it's not misfiring, you're not going to get anything. It's not going to change the power at all. One of the things that guys run into on boosted stuff is that we have to change the spark plug gap. So we have to run less gap. So we put it down usually in the teens. Whereas from the factory, it might be 35, 40, 45 on some of these factory motors. So less plug gap, easier for it to jump, less misfires. So we do that. And then also, like on the Holly, we control the dwell time for the coil. So it puts a hot enough spark in there and has a smaller gap to jump, and it doesn't misfire. So if you can get it to do that, then there's not going to be a problem. You don't need a hotter, like when we did 1,500 horsepower, we did it with factory LS3 coil packs and factory wires.
Yeah.
And it works just fine. But if you can have those things happen, now if a guy can't control the dwell and he doesn't put gap in it, he might think that he has to have hotter coil packs or 8 or 9 or 20 millimeter spark plug wires or whatever he wants to do. Then those things might be able to help. But they're only going to help if he doesn't have if he has a misfire.
So I guess then the question I have, why did they put more spark plugs? Why 2 per cylinder?
Particularly in a Hemi, they put 2 in there because a Hemi is really a terrible combustion chamber design. And they probably did it for emissions to get more efficient burning under emissions cycle and testing, and maybe even for mileage.
And when you say a terrible combustion chamber, what?
It's not efficient. It doesn't work as well as a good wedge design does.
Interesting.
And they did it, I think that they chose that not because they thought it was great. In fact, that Hemi design that they have in a modern Hemi is way different than a previous generation Hemi, than either the Gen 1 or the Gen 2. Because if you look at those are way more pronounced. Because if you look at a Hemi, it goes up like this. It goes up kind of at a point. And the spark plugs, the intake valve is on one side, the exhaust valve is on the other side. Well, the airflow has to go kind of up over this. That's not good. If you look at any modern race car engine, a modern 4-valve Formula 1 motor or whatever, it's going to have a very shallow pent roof chamber, a small chamber, and it's probably going to be like a flat top piston and not a big dome piston. Because anything you put in the way of the airflow can be problematic. And so you don't want that to happen. And Hemi is not very good like that. But what they did in the modern Hemi is they made that a shallower chamber. So they're coming down towards it being a regular wedge style chamber that's probably better.
Interesting.
You want it, what they're doing is they're making it go towards a 4-valve Coyote chamber, basically.
They're just creeping down on that.
That's a really good one, or a 2J or an RB or any sort of good 4-valve layout. That's better. It's a central spark plug, so it has an even amount, to go from there and propagate out in every direction. Not to go from, usually the spark plug even onto 2-valve is kind of in the middle, but if you have something in the way, it becomes more problematic.
So what would you say is like one of the more ideal flowing factory cylinder heads? I always hear such good things about the K series. Everybody likes those.
Yeah, and anything Honda's really good. I mean, even we look back in the late 80s, a B series head was really good.
Yeah.
You look at the flow rate of a B series head relative to its displacement, it's dramatic. I mean, it flows way more than any of the V8 stuff did. And it did it with, and this is the thing with guys saying, oh, but all that port volume is going to lose velocity. Well, you got a Honda B series that's 1.6 liters, like a B16, that it has a head that flows, I don't know, 250 or 260 CFM. That flows more than your V8 head does. And it's not losing low-speed power, mostly because a VTEC motor has a small cam in it and a long runner intake, and it works really, really well. But if you look at the reason why, like particularly LS motors or Hemis, work so well is because they have really, really good cylinder heads. So they, like in an LS3, you have a head that flows over 300 CFM. And that's really good. And same thing with the Apache and the Eagle Hemi heads. Over 300 CFM. So they have enough cylinder head to support between 600 and 700 horsepower NA. And so that's way more than they're making stock. And what they need to make that happen, I mean, not to get to those levels, but what they need, because they have really good intake manifolds, they have really good cylinder heads, they just need a cam. So when the factory puts a mild camshaft in them, because they're doing what the factory needs, they only need to make this amount of power and get this, they need to last this long with this spring package and get this emission thing and all that stuff. But when it has the other things and you put a camshaft in it, then you look like a hero. That's why we can get big power gains from a camshaft on an LS and on a Hemi.
I'm sure that killed some GM engineer that
they already knew that. I mean, that's the thing is I've had guys make that comment on the live feed and in comments and some of the videos. They're like, yeah, look how much better we do than the GM guys. I'm like, you aren't doing better than them. That guy's 1,000 times smarter than you'll ever be, or all of those guys. I said the goal for them was never to make as much power as possible, because if you gave them that goal, you'd have some super pissed off LS motors. I said their goal was, here's a list of all of the things, all the goals that they had to meet. And power was that's 27th on the list. It has to have, this emissions output. It has to last this long. It has to have this fuel mileage. It has to do all of these things. And so they put the thing in there that did that. And so they achieved all of that stuff. And cost is obviously a huge thing too. All of those things, and they were able to do that. But it's not because they don't know how to make power. They definitely know.
Well, that's what I mean. It probably killed them knowing oh man.
Yeah.
They probably had a cam that they were this cam would be insane in here, but we can't.
Yeah.
We can't, but we'll design everything else to be
we'll give them everything else.
maximized.
And I hope that when I did the Big Bang stuff and we're making all this power with these turbo motors and running these junkyard motors, I hope that there are LS engineers from back in the 90s or whatever, from the late 90s and early 2000s, that are just smiling going, yep, we did that.
Yeah.
We made that thing. It's super pissed off. Look how much power it takes.
Well, thinking about some of those engines, the Coyote is probably kind of at the end of it of over engineering.
Yeah, the Coyote's great.
Because now engineering is it's just to tolerance, just to spec, it seems like. An extra 20 horsepower on that thing is just gonna melt down. But for a while, it seemed like they were over-engineering things because they didn't know exactly how far it could go.
I think with a Coyote that what they did with that is amazing, because the specific power outputs of the Coyote are really impressive. They threw a lot of technology at it. It's a 4-valve double overhead cam. It's variable cam. I think, do they have variable runner manifolds on them? I don't think that a Mustang Coyote does, right?
I don't think that the Mustang one does, no.
But they threw a lot of technology at it, and it works really well. and it makes a lot of power. And I don't think we're at the limit of what they could, like I was saying, if you wanted to put more camshaft in them, you could do all that stuff. But the thing that limits the Coyote is the bore spacing. You can't make the motor bigger. Like, I would love to see a 6-liter Coyote. So, because the only thing better than a 5-liter Coyote is a 6-liter Coyote.
Yeah.
So then we could take advantage of all of the airflow potential that those heads have, and they have a ton. And particularly with direct injection, because they're not flowing fuel. So if you're, if they have both, you're flowing some fuel, which is nice because you're also getting charge cooling, which is good. But I wish that they would have stepped away from the original bore spacing of the modular design of the rest of the modular Fords, and they would have allowed them to make it bigger. Like, because then the 6-liter or 6.2 LS guys, if there's a 6-liter Coyote, they'd be going, oh, well, that's pretty sporty now.
Oh, yeah. I think we would have.
Yeah.
It'd be really tough to justify some other engines.
As long as, like, if they made a 6-liter Coyote, as long as the block and everything was still the current strength of what the 5-liter Coyote is, that would be great.
I think it'd be really dangerous for a lot of other people in racing.
Oh yeah, no,
that'd be for sure.
Yeah. All the Brent LaSalles would be kicked out of the classes, right?
I mean, even like stock camshafts make like 2,500 horsepower, which is insane.
Yeah.
Like, I got buddies that they're like, oh yeah, we're not putting aftermarket cams on this. We still use VVTi. We still, or variable valve timing. 2J VVTi.
Well, no, it's
the same concept, but they all kind of call it something different.
Yeah, and if you can swing the cams, you can advance or retard the cams. You can help the power curve. You can help the turbo spool up. You can do all of that's really good stuff, and that's one of the things that stops the market size of the Coyote is that. Like LS cam, that's a big industry. There's lots of people that sell LS cams.
Yeah.
There's hardly any Coyote cams in terms of sales because nobody wants to buy 4 cams. It's really expensive.
Well, it's
funny. So that limits cam sales for them because, I get guys that are like that too. They're like, oh, you don't need to put cams on a Coyote. I'm like, look, 100% the factory cams are not the most powerful cams that you can put in a Coyote. They're not even close.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they don't work and you add boost to it, it makes lots of power, but I'm saying it will make more power at the same boost if you put cams in it. It's just that marketplace is not going to do that in the same way that guys didn't want to put cams in the 4-valve Cobra motors because they don't want to spend thousands of dollars to do a cam swap to get 30 or 40 horsepower, whatever the gain is. They don't want to do that because it's not cost effective, especially when you just turn the boost up another pound or whatever.
Yeah.
You're like, I got that. I just got my cam swap.
Well, and you can tune the cams.
Yeah.
So you're like, I can kind of justify not getting cams because I can tune these ones.
Yeah,
a little bit.
You can make them better by swinging them, by advancing them back and forth. I mean, it doesn't do the same thing that more lift and more duration and different valve events do, but you can help the power curve by doing that. That's why they have VVT. It works really well. That's why the LTs have VVT. That works really well, and the later LSs had them too. And because that helps make more average power for the curve, and really helps for things like cruise and fuel mileage and emissions and all that. That works out really good. But, more lift and more duration definitely makes more power, but guys are just not going to spend the money on it.
Yeah. Well, the Coyote stuff is even funny because they'll modify their factory cams because they weld the lobes because they're pressed on lobes.
Yeah.
So they all weld them on there. So they're not even like...
And regrind them, yeah.
They're already taking them off and welding them and putting them back in, but they'll still not buy new ones.
Yeah.
I mean, even my 2J has a VVTi head still.
Yeah.
Because it just works
good. Are you
good.
using VVT on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's through the ECU. We get the turbo to spool like 300 RPM sooner using it.
If you can make more low-speed power, anything that you can do to make more low-speed power, you spool the turbo up faster.
Yeah.
And it's a multiplier effect because if you can have the turbo making boost 300 RPM, that's a big change.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It works really well for us. I mean, like a lot of people will use nitrous for that same thing.
Yep.
We can kind of use a mix of nitrous, CO2 to shut the gates and also,
And that becomes more important the bigger the turbo that you put on it. Because the bigger the turbo that you put on it, the harder it is to get it to spool. So that becomes more important. So then you throw all the stuff at it. You throw 2 steps at it and nitrous and all kinds of stuff to get to spool up so that you can then take advantage of what that turbo has to offer.
Well, a lot of the drag guys now are putting throttle bodies on the cold side.
Okay.
So that they can bleed off boost so that they can get the impeller wheel to spin up faster.
Oh, yeah.
On the turbo, which
Yep.
is becoming a more common thing.
That's cool. I've seen that. That's interesting.
It's just one of those, another thing.
Yep.
You know, like the next guy tries something different. And
Yeah.
I think it came from rally racing where they were doing it to keep the turbos lit.
Oh, for shifts. Yeah. Yeah, that would work.
Which is just, yeah, there's endless cool stuff. I always like talking to the smartest people in drag racing because they always
Yeah.
kind of have some secret things that.
Yeah, and the guys in road racing were doing that too. They were doing afterburning too. They were getting igniting fuel mixtures in the exhaust to keep the turbo up to speed so that they could exit out of the corner. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's why I like watching F1 too, because they always
Yeah.
have some.
They got
Crazy.
cool technology there. It takes a little while for that stuff to trickle down, but it's very cool.
The stuff that you see coming from there is like next level, out of this world, kind of just like.
Oh yeah, no, it's really high level stuff, and I love that there are guys out there that are that smart, that think of that stuff and go, you know, this is the highest level of performance and engineering, so we need to take it a little bit past that.
And you wonder, you're like, man, you could be doing something like, you know, in space or something.
Yeah,
but you're out here.
Well, you
messing
could be
with a race
doing
car.
whatever you want, basically, because you're at that level, and that they're applying it to that is very, very cool.
Yeah, it's funny to be like, oh man, that guy
Yeah.
kind of next level out here, but you know, cars are more fun.
I remember reading a story about, and this was early on in the development of back when they were using 12-cylinder Ferrari engines, and that they decided that they needed to put, when they were grinding the cams, they needed to put twist in the cam, because when the thing accelerated, because they had a front chain on it, they didn't have a center chain, so they had a front chain on it, and so when it would spin, the back valves would have different events than the front valves did. So they put twist in the camshaft so that they would all work the same under acceleration.
Well, there's like a delay.
Yeah, I'm like, so I want to be there in the bar while the engineers are sitting around drinking beers or whiskey or whatever and going, you know what we should do is we should twist that cam to get it to work like even better. Like, oh, that's a great idea, man. We need to go try that.
Yeah, that kind of stuff is.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
But you worry if engines like that. I guess I just have a worrying mentality of like engines on the really consumer side, like not Ferrari and Lamborghini, but like, are they gonna be as cool? I hope that I hope people buy them. Is the worry is like, I'm not buying anything new. I haven't bought anything new that the OEMs put out in a while.
Yeah, I have a 2002 truck, so that tells you.
Yeah,
that tells you how new I am.
Yeah, I got like a 2017 and a 2012, and I'm like, man, they're gonna have to try really hard to get me to get out of these.
Yeah. And I have a 2002, and I'm happy because it has a manual throttle body. Because I have a thing against drive-by-wire throttle bodies. I know that they're great. I know that they work, but I don't like suggesting that they go to wide open throttle. I want to make sure that they go to wide open throttle. Mm-hmm. And so I don't want it deciding that you don't really want wide open throttle right now. No, I do. I really do. And so a mechanical one just goes to wide open throttle when I want it to go to wide open throttle. So
well, even like all the new tuning is done by torque. It's not done by
torque management. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like crazy next level stuff. Even like, you know, I had the tuner that tuned the new ZR1 on here, and he was talking up here. I tried to understand it all, but because they're using all different like predictive torque in the engine, not even like real numbers. And
oh yeah, no, I know it's crazy. Are you guys doing any
Global B and stuff like that?
Yeah,
Joel is. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, now they're at a Global B. They've went to a different one on the new ZR1.
Yeah, that's 5 minutes ago. That's
yeah, it's like, wait.
Yeah.
You guys just introduced Global B.
I just learned about that, and now you've changed it?
Yeah, and it takes like 2 hours to get a data log.
Well, what was interesting, whenever I was tuning like the old 5.46 and 5.4 stuff in 2010 and 11, I took that break and I bought a 2016 Mustang, and I opened up the software and I was like, oh. Wow.
It's a whole new world.
Everything's changed, and it has, you know, the torque models and 27 timing tables and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, this is next level. But once you get into it and you start making the changes, you're like, that's why they did it.
This makes sense.
This is awesome.
Yeah, just a learning curve.
But also the software that you're using is different than the OEMs used, I assume.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
So then there's some variation there too. while we were talking about it, I was like, what are the OEMs using? I want to see like their back end.
Yeah.
Like, sure, HP Tuner's great, it works good and all, but like, what's on the other side of?
Well, you should see some of their software. I've seen some of their software for that they do for engine simulations, and it's unbelievable how good and accurate it is. But they have all of the data that they need to put in so they can plug in every parameter that they need for the prediction to be accurate. So it's not something that, like, we get, dyno simulations or whatever that guys want to do, and I have opinions about that stuff, but this is accurate. I mean, they still run it, they test it and run it on the dyno and verify it, and they do all that. But it's already, so they can build the whole motor and the curve and all that stuff. They can build it basically on a computer and have it be right. And then they test it, and then they can go in and go, yeah, this does what it's supposed to, and it's really amazing.
Do you think most people are misreading a dyno graph when they see it?
In what way?
Maybe reading not what's under the curve and how the curve, because I see a lot of people brag about like peak power and stuff, and then they got like this curve that looks.
I think people have different interpretations of the information that they get from the dyno, because I can look at a dyno graph and see a lot of stuff. And because I've been doing it for a long time, I don't just see that, it made 468 horsepower or whatever and 395 foot-pounds of torque or whatever. I don't just see that. In fact, I don't even, that's the reason that I supply graphs, is because for a long time, people were just saying, this gained 10 horsepower. Okay, it gained 10 horsepower out here, but it lost 30 foot-pounds down here, and you're not telling them about that. And a graph shows you that, a comparative graph. So a guy can look at a graph, even just the average guy that knows nothing about motors, he can look at a graph and go, okay, there it was this line, and now it's this line. If I don't put horsepower and torque in there to confuse them, it was this, and now it's this. Okay, this one is better. I can see that. I understand that. They understand that that's better. That's a really easy thing for them to grasp. But that's why when we do a comparative thing, and you see one is making like more torque up to 6,000 and the other one makes more power above that, that's why I ask them, okay, which one of these things is more important to you? And the one that should be more important to you is the one where it's making more torque up to 6,000, particularly for a guy that has a driver or something, or really even a drag race thing. For a guy that has a driver is going to be using that area 90% of the time.
Yeah.
Even if he goes to the drag strip and he uses the other part 10% of the time, or 5% or 1%, he should stick with the area that's going to be most beneficial for him. Like, that's why we kind of like smaller cams, because they make more low-speed power, and smaller turbos. Because a guy that steps on the gas, like our cars and coffee guy, or the donuts and donuts, ice cream, if he steps on the gas and it goes, they like that way more than they like, I made 1,000 horsepower or whatever, and it ran 890s or whatever. This guy that's doing this, there's way more of those guys, and that brings a smile to their face way more than this guy who can't take 1,000 horsepower and put it down out on the street anyways. He's not even going to be able to use that unless he's doing a roll race out on the freeway or something. So this guy is going to be happy. And so that guy that gets immediate boost and lots more torque, those guys are going to be way happier.
Well, I was just looking at like a Supra that was for sale.
Yeah.
And like the dyno graph goes like this, and I'm like, up here is like, I'm getting off the throttle if I'm on the street already. Like that,
you're already in go to jail area up in there.
It's getting terrifying in a rear wheel drive, stick shift car up here on this dyno graph. As it starts to do this, I'm like,
you're going to Mustang right into the crowd.
And they're like, it's 1,500 horsepower, but it's like,
I remember seeing this was years ago, but I remember seeing the first curve that I ever saw of a really stout, like, Supra, with a single turbo Supra that was making like, I don't know, it was 900 or 1,000 horsepower. And that's what it was. It was like, they ran it on a chassis dyno, on a dyno jet. And so it went, and then all of a sudden I'm like, that's going to be horrible to drive. I mean, this is all really cool. This is amazing. It makes lots of power. I said, but like, if you did a roll on with anybody here, you're just going to get walked right here. I said, and this, how are you going to manage traction with a slope like that?
Yeah.
That's going to be really hard to do because, every 100 RPM or whatever, it's gaining 100 horsepower. You're like, oh yeah, that's going to spin the tires. That's not going to work.
My car, like, it's a drag car, but like I've had it on the street a couple times, and it's like slow, terrifying.
Yeah, all of it. Yeah. Phew, I just looped it.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that was enough, and then I get off right when it's terrifying. So I'm
Yeah.
like, it was slow until
Yeah.
it was trying
Yeah.
to kill me.
And particularly the case for smaller displacement, big turbo applications where
Yeah.
it's making, you're making all the power, but it's only doing it like way up here when the turbo comes on. And so at the track where you can two-step it or stall it or get
Yeah.
all the things up into a range where you're using it. But on the street, while you're driving 30 miles an hour, that's not going to come into play.
I know, it doesn't make sense. I mean, I even see it with people modify their diesel trucks.
Yeah.
And you're just like, it's just whistling along, blowing coal.
Ugh.
And then finally, there's the power.
Yeah.
It seems like the Ford guys like to do it. The
Yeah.
older 6 liters and the 7.3s.
Yeah, and those guys are, I think, what probably brought the gaze of the EPA onto the performance industry is the guys rolling coal.
Yeah.
Because they're like, they shouldn't be doing that. How are they doing that? Why are they doing that? And guys that want to do that and smoke people out, I'm like, why are you doing that, man? Why are you bringing attention to all this? Like, it's bad enough when you're out making a pass or whatever and the car's loud and then you shut it off and you go hide somewhere or whatever. That's okay. But if you're doing that and making videos of it, that's going to bring attention that you don't want.
And like all the diesel drag racers I know, it's like it's a little bit of black smoke and then it clears up.
And it's clear, yeah. That's when you know that it's working good.
Yeah, that's when it's making some power.
The guys at West Tech had a diesel day where guys brought these diesel trucks, and you had some that were, they make 1,000 horsepower and 2,000 foot-pounds of torque or whatever, but they're just blowing soot out, and they're like, yeah, we're never doing this again, because it just coated everywhere,
Yeah.
It's not a good deal.
So we'll wrap this up. Where can people keep up with you? Where do you want to send people? What's our preference here?
Well, they can go to our store, which we have a store, richardholdenerperformance.com, or RHP. We sell lots of turbo stuff, and it's primarily LS, although all of the turbo stuff and all of that is for everything, because everything needs boost, or everything goes better with boost. My YouTube channel is just my name, Richard Holdener.
Yep, it'll be in the bio.
Yeah, and then the Facebook and Instagram, we do posts on there for all of that stuff.
Got it. Anything you want to end us off with here?
No, this was an awesome deal, and I appreciate it. It's always good, no matter who it is, whether it's on a podcast or wherever, just getting together with guys that are car guys. That's always awesome because you get to hear, we've all heard our stories. We already know what they are. We've told them all. But getting to hear other people talk and stuff, that's always awesome.
I appreciate you guys making the trip. Hopefully it was worthwhile. Thank you guys so much for coming on, and we'll see you next time.